And we are live.
Good evening. The meeting of the Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration is now called to order. I'd ask you to rise as you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. This evening, our clerk is Julia Sipple, who is assisting remotely, and she's supported by Jennifer Page. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councillor Wall?
Present.
Councillor Martin?
Here.
Councillor Sicoli?
Present.
Councillor Utley?
Present.
Councillor Mccreary?
Here.
Councillor Carpenter?
Present.
Councillor Sless?
Present.
Councillor Vanderstelt?
Present.
Councillor Van Tilborg?
Present.
Mayor Davis?
Present.
And Chair Councillor Antosky.
And I'm here. Thank you. I'd like to remind committee, staff, and our viewing public of the electronic participation policy for virtual meetings. For those staff and delegates joining virtually, please keep your video and microphones off until requested by the chair. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw continue to apply. The full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic virtual meetings is available online to review. We do have some declarations of conflict of interest this evening. Councillor Vanderstelt, I understand you have a conflict on item 6.1.2. Please confirm and state the nature of the conflict.
I do indeed, Chair Antosky. My wife and I have owned and operated Airbnbs in the past, and we plan to do so in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I understand you have a conflict on item 6.1.5. Would you also please confirm and state the nature thereof?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6.1.5 is the resolution regarding regulation of fortification elements, which also has restrictions in it regarding surveillance camera systems. As probably most members of council know, I do have a surveillance camera system, and I believe the way that, well, in any event, I don't believe that it would be possible for my surveillance system to comply with the regulations as they're there. So I think it gives rise to an interest of some kind, and therefore I believe the appropriate route is to clear my conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of committee, are there any other declarations of pecuniary interest for items appearing on the agenda? Councillor Wall?
Yeah, my reasons are the same as Mayor Davis's. My house is equipped with a surveillance system, and I will declare a conflict on that item.
On item 6.1.5, thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I don't have a conflict, but I would like 6.1.6 separated, please. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe that's item 1, correct? Councillor Utley, item 1 on that item, not the one.
Well, there are two items,
You want both
the construction
separated?
review and the security release.
Okay, so you'd like both pieces separated, thank you.
Please, thank you.
Any further separations? So thank you. Councillor Mccreary, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Have we separated 6.1.3?
No.
Let's do that one, please.
Thank you. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, Madam Chair, am I safe to assume 6.1.4 signage devices, that's being separated because I believe we might have a delegation on that one?
Yes, 6.1, and sorry, I should have stated that at the beginning. 6.1.4 is separated as we have a delegation, and we have the conflict of interest, which is 6.1.5, And those are the items that are already previously separated.
Great, thanks very much.
All right, I don't see any further hands. Councillor Utley, can you move the motion to approve all items for consideration, not separated for discussion purposes, please?
I would appreciate, could I have that pulled up on the screen, please? Thank you very much. Moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless, that all items for consideration and consent 6.1 and 6.2 not separated for discussion purposes be approved. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and we'll call the vote on this, please.
Thank you. Just prior to the vote, I will just state the items that are subject to this vote. So item 6.1.1, 2022 municipal election planning legislation update, compliance audit committee plan, and corporate use of resources in an election policy update, as well as 6.1.2, all minutes. All items not separated for discussion purposes carried unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
Thank you. Members of committee, we have one registered delegation for tonight's meeting. Mr. Bro, please come forward and state your comments, and please be advised you have 10 minutes inclusive of questions from members of the committee. Have a seat up here and begin when you're ready.
My mask off, or is that okay? Okay. Actually, not really much to mention tonight, just more of a commendation to the city staff. We've been working together with Heidi DeVries, Joe Blankley, and Andy McMahon, and Councillor John Utley with regards to the proposed report 2022-127 regarding bylaw 478. I originally saw the draft that came out a while ago before it was sent back to city staff, and noticed that there was a number of omissions that were missing, in particular to latest standards for digital signs in proximity to signalized intersections. So and it's more of a commendation, and I do appreciate it's been refreshing to work with Mr. Vries, Ms. Bankley, and Mr. McMahon, and of course my councillor John Utley, to go through this. A lot of you people know me as Dairy Queen and so on, but believe it or not, I had another life before Dairy Queen, and I still do a lot of work for the Ministry of Transport in certifying signalized intersections across the province. So I do have certifications and a lot of experience in that area. And it was appreciative to see that city staff and councillors, I appreciated that they received the input, and I would definitely support the latest recommendations that will be coming towards, I think it's voting next week, I believe, or next. Sorry?
We'll be voting on this evening.
Oh, well, yeah, okay, I didn't realize that. I thought it was.
And we'll move it up on the agenda, so it'll be one of the first items.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. That's all really. I just wanted to commendate the people that were involved here.
Thank you, Mr. Bro. We've got some questions for you. So
do you? Okay.
We do. Councillor Utley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Ken, it's been a long time with this topic. Will the 30 meters give you the distance that you need to install a digital sign?
According to Andy and the geo software, I think that you use within the city, it looks like it pretty much lands at right where we were looking at putting it, and meets all the requirements. So we should not have to apply for any type of minor variance, I don't believe, in this case. The other thing I'll have to find out, and I just have to be educated on this, is what happens with the previous application. Do I withdraw it? Do I submit a new one? Do we amend it based on whatever happens on the vote tonight?
And one more question, Madam Chair. Right now, you've got a a static display. I'm not sure what the correct name is. And you often put up messages for the community and the good causes that you support through Dairy Queen. Will this allow with a digital sign? It'll certainly take the labor out of it, but how will that help you not only with yourselves, but with your community causes as well?
Well, we'd be looking at utilizing it for promoting other events, and I've seen it similar done in West Brant at Window World. Quite often, Michael lists special events that are coming up in the community and so on, and that would be the intent as well. And as you know, we have the community corner there now for the shed for the community organizations to use. So this will really kind of complement that whole, meeting location. That's what we're trying to do, is bring it back to where it was, and the family values and the community was back in the 50s and 60s, and much more core and wholesome.
Ken, thank you for all you do. You do a massive amount of work for our community. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got Mayor Davis, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Ken. A couple questions for you about, there are three major recommendations in here. I just want to make sure that you're okay with them. The distance between signs and crosswalks and signalized intersections, it's proposed at 30 meters. I know it's been a big concern that you've had in the past. Does that meet your concerns? Because it's reducing it from 50 to 30?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Another section has to do with dwell times, which is the amount of time each screen remains up on the sign. And the proposal is 20 seconds. Are you okay with that? Or do you think it should be more or less?
Nope, that's quite acceptable. It's a reasonable amount of time so there isn't additional distraction.
Okay. And lastly, there's a brightness requirement, maximum 5,000 NITs during daylight and 300 NITs during overnight.
Exactly. This same thought process there is, and you can see that at the Delta and Cambridge where they do a similar operation. But one that should be tweaked is the one on Highway 24 near the 401, just south of the 401, which is quite bright at night. So yeah, we don't want to be overpowering, that's for sure, and distract anybody.
Right. So you agree though those requirements, they'll meet that standard that you think is appropriate?
I do. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ken. I know it's been an issue for you for a long time, and we appreciate your input.
Thank you.
And I don't see any further speakers. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
We're going to move this item next.
Okay.
Members of the committee will now move on to items separated. We're going to start with 6.1.4. Because of the delegation, Councillor Sesk, would you please read the motion to place all separated items for consideration and consent not previously voted on the floor, and state your seconder, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Utley. The items for consideration, where are we here? Sorry. That all items for consideration, consent items 6.1 and 6.2 separated for discussion purposes be approved.
No. All right, thank you. All right, we are going to move to 6.1.4. Do we have any comments from committee or questions? Mayor Davis.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I've got a quick question for staff. How'd you come up with 30 meters as opposed to say 20 when the daylight triangle, the apex is 9 meters, I think?
Good evening, Andy McMahon, Chief Building Official, Director of Building Services. Through the chair, we did a review of comparative municipalities, and it was pretty much an even split between either 30 meters or the daylight triangle. The daylight triangle varies in most municipalities and even varies depending upon the type of intersection. In Brantford, that number would be 9 meters. We felt that was too close, so in consultation with Mr. Bro, and I would like to thank Mr. Bro for all the information that he has provided us. He has a wealth of information and documentation. So we looked at those numbers and we worked through it with him and his comments, and we landed on 30 and felt that that was in line with what other municipalities were doing and would provide an adequate level of safety.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Another question. Now, this has to do with the brightness of signs, and we've heard a lot of comments regarding, I guess, the signs that everyone's most familiar with on West Street, and there's one on Grand Ave, Paris Road. How does the regulation of 5,000 NITs during daylight and 300 NITs, is that what those signs are operating to, or do we not know, or are they brighter, are they dimmer? How do they compare?
Through the chair, we don't have the numbers on the existing signs. When those signs were installed, that was not in the bylaw. I know that we did have some issues when they were installed a few years ago, and in dealing with the sign operators, they did make some adjustments to them. If it's still an ongoing concern, then that's something we can address with the sign operators.
Right. And so will these new standards, assuming this is approved by council, will they apply to those currently existing signs?
Correct. We've made an amendment to there's some new language in the report, and if approved, the amending bylaw will allow for us to look at existing digital signs and require that they meet the new regulations for the brightness, the dwell time, and the transition time as well, not the distance.
And so these seem to be accepted by most of those in the industry as being a fair compromise. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Chair, I've got some concerns about the dwell time. The dwell time for viewers, that's the length of time that each ad appears on the sign before it moves into the next ad. The proposal is 20 seconds, and many municipalities have it at 6 to 8. Some of the industry players have said it should be 6 to 8 seconds. Toronto actually did, City of Toronto, a thorough study, and they set it at 10 seconds. Madam Chair, I'm going to propose an amendment. And the amendment will be to 10 seconds on the basis that I think there's something we haven't considered, the impact on small businesses, many of whom use these signs to promote their business and get their businesses off the ground. And obviously the cost of the ad and their exposure varies considerably, i.e. the longer the dwell time. I think probably the greater the barrier for smaller businesses to use signs like this. So anyways, I probably have gone 4 minutes. I'll be quiet, and I'd like to put that amendment on the floor when you think it's appropriate.
Thank you. You actually had some time. I was going to ask you to hold the amendment if you didn't mind until we've got some speakers. We had GM Hans. I'm wondering if you still wanted to speak up, Indy.
Oh, nope, that's good. Andy covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, it was Joe. Thank you. It's coming up under different names here. Next, we have Councillor Utley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express my thanks to staff, Jill and Andy, especially, and all the others that were involved in not just helping Mr. Brow, but all the other businesses that are switching from the old-fashioned type of signs to the new digital format. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Next, we have Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you. Is the mayor's amendment on the floor, or is it held up?
I've asked him to
Okay.
hold it until everybody had a chance.
Well, when it is appropriate for him to move it, I'd be happy to second that. It's something I was considering doing as well, and I'm quite happy somebody beat me to the punch. It shows there will be more support for this. But we did receive correspondence from a sign company that give us a list of our quite common comparators that are all in the 6, 8, 10 second range. So I think the 10-second amendment will be appropriate, and I'll be happy to support the mayor's amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Slass, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, mine too was on I believe it's called the dwell time as well. I was trying to remember when this was first introduced. Maybe staff can refresh my memory. I think we've adjusted it from 20, but I'm not sure where it was. I know there was concern from the sign company that if the dwell time is too long, they become non-financially viable. So I just wonder if you can, if staff can answer what it was in the first rendition when it first came to us. What was the proposal for the dwell time?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Celeste. So I believe the first run at this, really, we did recommend the 20-second dwell time, but prior to that, the existing bylaw is a 3-second dwell time, so it could be seen as more distracting and flashing. So when we've actually looked at the TAC document, they do recommend a 20-second dwell time, but they do differentiate between third-party advertiser or on-premise signs. So we're really taking the more conservative, cautious approach, but certainly do recognize the requests of the marketing companies, and that's why we included it in the report for committee's consideration.
Okay, thanks, Jill. And thanks, Madam Chair. I'll certainly be looking forward to the amendment because I think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Celeste. Next, we have Councillor Vanderstelt, please.
Thank you, Chair Antosky. A huge thanks to Andy and Jill and Heidi, who have worked on this recently as the technology changes, as the needs are more defined. But we would be remiss if we didn't thank Gary Anderson as well, who first had his hands on this project. In terms of the bringing some more definition to what digital signs are, and the parameters around them. He put in a wealth of work as well. I think it's probably just another example of us responding and reacting to changes in the open market use of signage and those types of signage. And it's encouraging to see that we can continue to move our bylaws along with the change in technology. So thank you to everybody who's had a hand in making this possible, including, of course, the Committee of Adjustment where this first came. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First time speaker, Councillor Van Tilburg, please.
So originally, a lot of these signs were in the 2 to 3 second range. Is that what I heard? That for the dwell time?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg, that is correct.
That's significant. So how do we do a study to determine what is acceptable that doesn't become distracted driving from a sign? We went conservatively for 20. Is there a difference between day and night on the dwell time? Does that make a difference, brighter, charger, the length of time that somebody's eyes hooked to a sign or not? 10 seconds, I've just been sitting here with my phone playing with 10 seconds. 10 seconds is relatively long. 20 seconds is very long if you're just sitting here. But how do we who set that parameter? You said you pulled it out, but how did they do this? How did they grab that number, 20 seconds?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg. So we've used the TAC document for the 20-second recommendation. The MTO also uses the 20-second dwell time. That is relatively new. The challenge with this entire thing has been the lack of safety data and very hard evidence to go off of. So we're trying to be. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Where was that data coming from, like the safety data? So somebody has got basically a conservative arbitrary figure. We don't really have anything to meld that against, and so we're going to pick 10 seconds. What if, would safety data be accumulated after these signs go up?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg, locally, I think that would be a question for David Ferguson, and we do have him tonight.
Even if not locally, certainly provincially.
I do believe TAC and the MTO do studies relative to safety for various things. I don't know if DPADS is sort of on the list of priorities right now. I think they are gaining popularity, so it is hopefully something we will see more of moving forward. But just to give committee an idea of the existing digital signs, they are operating around a 6 to 8 second dwell time, if that's helpful for council.
Is there any legal repercussions of us going to a shorter dwell time than what has been recommended?
Through the chair, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any further hands. Mayor, would you like to move your amendment?
Madam Chair, I'd be delighted to move an amendment. I actually changed my mind. Councillor Tilburg changed my mind. So I'm going to move 8 seconds, and I'm looking for a seconder at 8 seconds. There's one there, Councillor
I see
Vanderstelt.
Councillor Vanderstelt, yep.
And I'll tell you why, because, so reading the material, so we have some of the, well, we have Pattison outdoor signs and we have media, Media City. And outdoor, Pattison was very helpful. They gave us a list of other municipalities. They mentioned that an 8 to 10 second they thought was appropriate. They told us Toronto set it at 10, Mississauga 10, London 10, Kitchener does 6 seconds. Cambridge is at 10 seconds, Hamilton's at 6 seconds, Niagara Falls 6 seconds, and Pickering 6 seconds. Nobody's actually at 8. And it's only the Ministry of Transport and Guelph that have it at 20 seconds. And Media Sign did point out that the 20-second limit makes sense when you're on a highway. And there are good reasons for why the dwell time should be longer for highway traffic as opposed to local traffic. In fact, Media City thought maybe 15 seconds was a fair compromise. But I also found it interesting, Pattison referred to a study that was done in Sweden. And in Sweden, it was done by the Swedish Road Authority, and it suggested a 7-second message duration. So it's kind of some differences there, but given what our neighbors have done, what these businesses tell us are commonly accepted, clearly 20 seconds, I think it's too long. And yeah, just sit there and count off 20 seconds. It's a long time if you think about it. And I think a fair compromise is the 8 seconds. And certainly that almost triples it from what it is right now in our bylaw at 3 seconds. So I think it's a fair compromise and should make it this media still readily accessible to small businesses. And 20 seconds, I think, would create ads that are probably very expensive for small business. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Do we have any further speakers on the amendment? Seeing none, we will vote on the amendment.
Sorry, I do apologize. I seem to be having technical difficulties. Just give me a moment. Sorry, I do apologize. Just to clarify in regards to this vote, I think I'm going to have to just retake it. It was not to be a dwell time to a maximum of 10 seconds. It was to be a dwell time of 8 seconds.
Right.
If I can just cancel this, please give me a moment. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Okay, I see it's corrected on here. It's a minimum dwell time of 8 seconds, not maximum. It's corrected now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, through the chair. The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 10 to 1. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall. Those against, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, thank you. Do we have any further comments on this as amended? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote, please.
Item 6.1.4 carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
Thank you. The next item we have is 6.1.2. That's been separated due to the conflicts that we have. This is short-term accommodation parking requirements. Do we have any speakers for this one? Seeing, oh, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just the staff, has this been changed from the last time when we reviewed this, and talked about this? Is this a difference or is this the same?
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, this is just an explanation and further detail of this, that what was included within the bylaw. So we've again included to strike the requirements within licensing and leave the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I see no further speakers. We'll go to the vote.
Item 6.1.2, short-term accommodation parking requirements, carries unanimously on recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Utley, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall, noting Councillor Vanderstelt's conflict of interest.
Thank you. Next, we have 6.1.3, Councillor Mccreary. This is yours, proposed amendments to Chapter 206, Animal Control.
Chair, thank you very much. And may I say what a wonderful job you're doing presiding over an evening when we're debating chickens, doggies, and coyotes, a wildlife night, Chair Antosky. My comment and question with respect to this chicken and dog item before us tonight relates to the dog portion. And we have some further definition of kennel. However, what Councillor Martin and I have seen of late is a circumstance where we have a doggy daycare operating in one of our neighborhoods, which has become something of a nuisance to the folks in the immediate neighborhood who are subjected to the presence of doggies in numbers in what was formerly a quiet residential neighborhood. And I'm wondering if, in fact, we have the ability with respect to our bylaw to regulate the operation of said doggy daycares.
Through the chair to Councillor Mccreary. So with respect to this particular amendment regarding the kennel, so this would match the M2 zoning where kennels are permitted in the zoning bylaw. So a kennel or a doggy daycare could be regulated under the zoning bylaw in an M2 zone, not in a residential area. And so changing this or amending this would not assist in doggy daycares for residential areas.
Thank you for that answer. But what I'm asking is, can we regulate those types of home occupation businesses?
So through the chair to Councillor Mccreary, so those types of home occupations would be regulated again through the zoning bylaw. Doggy daycares would arguably take place mostly outside. And the requirements for home occupation is that the business is conducted on the interior. So I don't know if that helps to assist clarify.
I don't know either, to be quite honest. I wonder if so let me see if I can recap what you said. We're not doing, we can't do that with respect to what's before us tonight. The definition of kennel and the housekeeping item associated with that.
Through the chair, that's correct. So that wouldn't apply to residential zones.
So a kennel is an operation where doggies are welcomed into the world and raised to go out on their own to improve the lives of the people lucky enough to get them. Is that what a kennel is?
Through the chair, yes. Or a kennel could be, say, a doggy daycare operating commercially in a M2 zone.
M2 meaning industrial?
I'm not 100% sure.
Sorry, through the chair, Heidi DeBreeze, General Manager, People, Legislative Services and Planning. I think for clarification purposes, what Ms. Binkley is saying is that when you amend this definition in our animal control bylaw, it's referring to a kennel as it is defined in the zoning bylaw. That use is not permitted in residential zones. So if you wanted to regulate doggy daycares, which are often operated in residential zones, we would require an amendment to our zoning bylaw to permit that use in a residential zone. And then we would have corresponding licensing, which we could do through our business licensing program. So currently, the definition of kennel as contained in the animal control bylaw was not sufficient to actually regulate this. And we're trying to match that up with the zoning bylaw so that use is not currently permitted.
So thank you for that. So businesses, home occupation businesses operating as doggy daycares are now not operating legally. Is that the short answer in residential zones?
Through the chair to Councillor Mccreary. Oh, sorry, there's Andy.
Andy McMahon, Chief Building Official. If I could just jump in here through the chair to you, Councillor McCreary. A doggy daycare would not be permitted in a residential zone as a home occupation because the zoning bylaw for home occupations regulates that the home occupation has to be conducted entirely within the dwelling unit.
My apologies, Andy. May I interrupt for a moment? We have a conflict of interest that's been being declared by Councillor Sikoli, not realizing that the discussion was going to take this. Go ahead, Councillor Sikoli.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I need to declare a conflict of interest on the doggy daycare. A very good friend of mine and a colleague, I believe, is the owner of said doggy daycare. So I'm going to step aside from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you. So as I was saying, a doggy daycare as a home occupation would have to be run entirely within the dwelling unit. So I don't know that anybody would be able to do such a thing because they would have to have the dogs outside for a portion of the day. So, it would not meet the bylaw for that, as well as they would have to keep within the minimum or the maximum number of dogs that are permitted on a property.
Thank you, folks, for that answer. We'll take this up offline.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Wall, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Maria in the house?
Through you, Madam Chair. Maria Vasaki is not here tonight.
Okay, I was going to ask a little bit about the public engagement camp. Oh, Maria's right there.
Sorry, I am here. Sorry.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, Councillor.
Thank you for the Let's Talk campaign on this. I really appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And then my second question is for, I guess, whoever wants to answer it. I get a lot of calls about pets, animals, let's call them for lack of a better word in this case. What's allowed, what's not allowed, how many guinea pigs can you have? My neighbor's got too many hamsters. I think they have a snake. Somebody might have an alligator. I never had an alligator call. I'm being a little playful. But if people in our community wanted to know what you can have, what you can't have, what the rules are, and who enforces those rules, where would they go? So my first question, please tell me all about the Let's Talk campaign for this particular issue. My second question, where is that info found? Thank you.
Through the chair, Maria Vasaki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement. To clarify, Councillor Wall, are you talking about the Let's Talk Brantford campaign specific to the chickens engagement?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I know the discussion was about dogs before, so I just wanted to make sure that we were on the right animal subject matter. So just briefly, I can tell you that there was a very robust response to this campaign, both on Let's Talk Brantford as well as on the city's social media channels. Certainly generated a lot of conversation and a lot of opinions. It was pretty polarized. I believe the statistics are in a report to council or committee that is before you tonight. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe there were nearly 600 participants who completed the survey. And based on information that we've learned from Dr. Popham and the research work that we've done with Laurier, a sampling of 500 for a size of our community is a pretty accurate reflection of community sentiment. So I think that the response was very, very good for this issue. What else did you want to know specifically?
So, I mean, I don't speak for any of the other counselors, but I receive lots of calls from people about what's allowed, what's not allowed when it comes to animals in our community.
Right.
Somebody couldn't have a horse in the backyard up in West Brant, right? Or could they?
It's a great question.
Sorry, this is specific to tonight is to chickens and the kennel piece. So if we can keep it focused.
For sure. I guess the question more so is in regard to this particular issue about what's allowed and what's not allowed. I would imagine that there's questions from the community on where is this information easily accessible? And that would be, who do they call? Where do they go?
So through the chair, I would say in terms of information that is readily accessible on the city's website, the animal control bylaw obviously is searchable on the city's website. To your point, I do think that we could make a more user-friendly experience for people who don't necessarily know that this information is contained in the legal language of a bylaw. So we could make that information more readily available through listing the highlights of what you can and cannot have. I do think that there are a number of exceptions that we would need to work with our friends in legal to clarify, especially in terms of service animals, for example, that are allowed for those who require them for emotional or other kinds of supports. So there's a lot of variables, but we could certainly work on making that information more available.
Awesome. I knew I could count on you. How much time do I have left, Chair?
Would you like me to put you back in the queue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Sorry, Mayor Davis, please.
My hand's not raised.
Apologies, you've put it down. I'm sorry. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the mayor's hand was raised, but I think that he very well knows this situation more than most. We raised this back in 2019 as this resolution first going to council and then on to staff. So I want to thank staff. They did a terrific job here. I mean, this is a kind of a situation where it's a no-win. You get half the people that don't like it and half the people that like it. That usually tells me we're in the right area because what's going on here is that people want to have chickens and have eggs and they farm in their backyard. They grow gardens, as the chair knows for sure. And this is happening in a lot of big cities. And staff did a lot of good research looking around and seeing what the best options were. And they bring forward recommendations that not only keep the neighborhoods healthy, keep the birds healthy, and keep the community healthy. I have had concerns with people who have small backyards. I mean, really small backyards. I mean, just big enough for the coop in some cases, in semi-detached situations where they have all kinds of chickens and they have all kinds of problems. And I have all kinds of complaints from neighbors. There's a smell of not keep cleaning up after the birds. I mean, anybody knows that the feces of chickens can be very, very detrimental to anybody's health and into using your own backyard. And they've, the inspection process, the protection of the animals, making sure the coop is maintained properly, and then those that want to keep 4 birds can do so, which is 1,000 eggs a year. That's a lot, for their own use, which is great. I think they found the compromise here, and I really want to thank staff for the research, the work it did, and the Let's Talk Brantford did bring a lot of people to the table to talk about this. And I don't want to run afoul of any of them, excuse the pun, but I thought Councillor Vanderstelt would appreciate that. Then just to say that it is a good result. I know it took staff almost 3 years, but it takes a while to get things right. And I think they've got this one right. And I really want to congratulate them for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sless, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I thought Councillor Carpenter was going to say he was too chicken to vote on it, but I won't use that line. Just through you, Madam Chair, to the bylaw folks, if there is a complaint about odor, how would that be dealt with?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste, they could call the city's main line and they would put them in touch with Bylaw, and Bylaw could come and investigate. So they would likely investigate first against the proposed regulations, should they be approved, and just ensure that any documentation provided by our bylaw team to anyone seeking a permit for chickens, that, you know, they have access to all the resources from OMAFRA, Public Health Ontario, about, you know, safekeeping of the birds, keeping the coops clean, manure management, all of that sort of thing. So they could call the bylaw department and we could be their first call for help.
Okay, and if someone is a perennial breaker of that bylaw, is there a fine involved if one's not doing what they should be doing? Repeat offender?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Celeste, we do have some set fines established for Chapter 206, and we could look to amend those with any approvals for the proposed regulations for chickens.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just to be clear, I don't know whether it's been said out loud, but the proposal is for 4 hens maximum. There's a licensing fee of a one-time $100 charge to be able to do that, and roosters are not allowed. Is that a fair a summary?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First time speaker, Councillor Mccreary, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Is there provision for the proponent of chicken keeping to have to seek the blessing of the immediate neighbors to qualify for a license?
Through the chair to Councillor Mccreary, there is not a regulation proposed for that. However, there are setbacks from structures proposed and yards. Now, some municipalities do require permission or blessing from adjacent property owners, but that's not something we have recommended. We've seen a few municipalities, but nothing across the board just yet.
That may be something that we wish to take into consideration before this comes back to council. In the 3rd ward, we generally receive a complaint every year and a half about the keeping of pigeons in neighborhoods. And every now and again, a pigeon keeper runs afoul. Come on, that's the best one of the night so far, isn't it? Runs afoul of the neighborhood with respect to the sanitary nature, and folks are always afraid of rats. So I think we should maybe give some consideration to that in the interim before this is finally passed. There also are a number of other kinds of birds that folks keep within the city of Brantford. And I can't think of the names of those kinds of birds, but I do know of a couple of circumstances where they do keep them, and I'm not sure they keep them for the eggs. Was there consideration given to the keeping of other sorts of birds?
So through the chair to Councillor Mccreary, not with this report in particular. So we just followed the resolution for chickens and roosters, so specific to those. The animal control bylaw does speak to pigeons, and I'm not sure if there's other birds in that or not off the top of my head. But this report specifically was just with chickens and roosters.
And we're not going to encumber these people with the necessity to belong to a bird club, are we? As we currently do?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mccreary, and my apologies to Councillor Wall and Davis. And in the spirit of playing along, it's because I could not read my chicken scratch. Councillor Wall, next.
I still don't know how to use this microphone thing. Okay, thank you. So in this room and online, this has been made out to be a bit of a laughing matter, which fair, the puns are funny. I just, in all seriousness, if you're a neighbor or somebody living in a community and you have somebody who is a neighbor and they're being a nuisance with neighbors, this is the most important thing in your world. It's like living on a major thoroughfare in the street and the obnoxiously loud cars where people are just putting on a show and waking up your newborn child, or, you know, a neighbor snow blowing their lawn at 11 p.m. or whatever, the driveway at 11 p.m. These are very serious matters. And that's why I want to go back to how we're informing the public on what their rights are and what their protections are. You know, peaceful possession and enjoyment of your home it's a right. And I find that too many times on social media specifically, somebody will ask something in one of the groups, the Ask Anything groups or the neighborhood association groups, about like, hey, my neighbor has too many dogs, what do I do? And you get a million answers and nobody knows what the actual answer is. And Maria, I'm not trying to give you a hard time about this, but it's the same thing with fireworks. It's the same thing with noisy vehicles. It's the same thing with animals. People just don't know what to do and where the rules are. So I'm going to save you, Maria, because my questions, I think, are for Jill and Bylaw. How are we enforcing the rules that we're making? Everyone might remember the rooster conversation we had. I was adamant that I didn't see a difference between a loud rooster and a barking dog. And I know that, you know, roosters are like 6 o'clock in the morning, but I mean, I've had constituents call me because they have a neighbor's dog who's been left out in the backyard and just barked the entire night and kept the whole neighborhood up. And they called and there was no one to come and help them. And I don't think that that's a foul, pardon the pun, on our bylaw department. But the thing is who's going to be enforcing these rules? And, you know, we're having this big discussion in council chambers about this tonight. Are there thousands of calls about this particular issue? Like, what is the merit for this? Are there that many chickens in Brantford? So I'm going to stop talking. But my three major concerns are this. One, the information is hard to understand. It's not easily accessible, and rhetoric lives on the internet. Two, how are we enforcing these rules that we're making? And then three, what do people do and where do they go when they have a concern? Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Wall. So just to start with question number one, we would really like to update our bylaw web pages. We know that there are a lot of changes in our area. We have new shifts that have been added. So that kind of goes into your number two question about enforcement. We do have an evening shift Monday to Sunday, working 4:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. So we do see that shift getting a lot more of the noise related calls. So that's sort of the enforcement piece. And then the third question I didn't catch.
I think it's more just about accessibility to the information, which you've kind of covered. It's just, there's a lot of people in town who got a lot of cats. And if I'm not mistaken, you're not allowed to have as many cats as most people have. And it's almost unfair. Unfair maybe is not the right word, but I mean, like, people have these animals and many people, they're members of their family. And I just have a really hard time. Like, I have had calls from vindictive neighbors who are deliberately going after people who are not necessarily being a nuisance. And a lot of this stuff really confuses me and puts me in a peculiar position, because for every person it affects negatively, there's somebody else on the other side. And it's really difficult making these, you know, overarching rules that are, you know, it's rules for the sake of rules sometimes. And I just want to make sure that we're making the right move here. That's all. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, as we sit here perched on our chairs, I'd like to make sure we don't do anything that will come home to roost. And so a couple of questions about what the current situation is. And so if I understand correctly, this, Jill, maybe this goes to you. So chickens are allowed, but you have to be registered with the Brant County Poultry, Pigeon, and Rabbit Association, and the chickens must be raised for exhibition at a bona fide agricultural exposition. Is that pretty much the size of what we currently have in place?
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, that is correct.
And there's no limit on the number of chickens, right?
Chair, that is correct.
So how many of these do we have in the city?
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, we have, over the last few years, I think we have about 30 complaints related to poultry, and they vary under infractions under animal control, noise, debris, so our weed and waste bylaw, and some property standards issues as well. So there's kind of a variety of complaints related to chickens.
Yeah, but do we know how many people, how many residents are actually raising chickens? Do you have any idea?
We believed there to be approximately 30 properties.
Okay. And, you know, so what we have in place right now, maybe it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense if you're trying to control the number of situations where chickens are being raised next door to you, because, well, under this, you have to be raising them for a bona fide agricultural exposition. You got to register with the association. So I think what you end up with a requirement like that is probably some pretty responsible chicken owners. And so what we're now going to have is those requirements are being dropped. Is that right, Jill? You don't have to be a member of the association, and you can just be keeping hens just for the purpose of keeping hens and I guess having eggs and stuff. Is that right?
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, that's correct.
All right. And so do you have any idea how many coops? I don't know if that's the word. How many residents that you believe will be raising chickens in their backyard, given that this is a little more wide open? It's a lot more wide open, albeit there's a number on the restriction on the number.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, we're anticipating, it is kind of an estimate at this point, perhaps 20 permits that we could issue, just based on some publicity that this may gain. People may be more educated. There's more resources on how to keep your flock healthy in your backyard. So this may bring a little bit more attention to it. So we'd like to be prepared with educational materials in addition to the permitting process.
All right. And what do you suggest we do if it turns out we start getting a lot of complaints? Rats, noise, odors, that sort of thing.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, we would recommend that anyone that would like to file a complaint would call the city's main line, request to file a bylaw complaint, and a bylaw officer can investigate.
But is it fair to say that if we go forward with this, the chickens will be out of the coop and it'd be pretty hard to put them back in the sense that it'd be once you allow this, I assume it's hard to decide the program shouldn't continue.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, Mayor Davis, I didn't catch that last part.
All right, so let's say we do this and it turns out to be a problem. Would we be able to decide not to do it? Like not continue it?
Go ahead and answer that, Ms. Binkley, and then your time's up for this one, Mayor.
Okay. Through the chair, I believe that would be a decision of council. We could bring council information as to how the program is going to provide more information and then leave it up to council to decide.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councillor Carpenter, second time, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first time we brought this forward, council will remember it was about a rooster that was crowing all day long. And those that think roosters only crow at 6 in the morning, that's not so. They can crow whenever they feel like crowing, quite frankly, and they do. And it was a rooster problem that we had in the area and people couldn't sleep. And then the issue was, well, as long as they belong to the fancier club, well, anybody can register and belong to the fancier club. You just got to pay a membership. And when I raised this last time, there was lots of opposition, and I went out and met with the fancier club in the Paris Fairgrounds, where they operate out of. And I went there and met with them and explained the concerns and the problems. While we've had 30 complaints, that doesn't mean there's only 30 people with raising chickens out. In fact, there's far more than that. There's all kinds of people out there raising chickens. Some of them, just because they're very good neighbors and they got very good, expensive, well-kept coops, and the neighbors don't have a problem, you don't get complaints. There are a lot of people that have very expensive coops and are raising chickens. This limits them, it registers them, so we know where they are, and the health of the birds are being taken care of, and the limitations of having roosters in next to you making all kinds of noise, and the ability of where they store food is part of the regulation, and that's where the rat problem comes in. And I've got that concern in my neighborhood in Brentwood Park, so I've had that concern as well. So we see all these things coming forward. This regulation limits to 4. Many other cities have dealt with this. Vancouver, Toronto has them. So this isn't anything new. And this isn't making anything wide open. It's wide open before, when all you could do is pay a membership fee to belong to a club. And now you're unlimited how many birds you can have and what they can do. That's wide open. Currently, it's wide open. Because a bylaw just says you have to belong to the club, and that just requires a membership. So when I went to the club, I asked them, who inspects these coops? Well, nobody does. There is no process for inspection, and that's not how it works. You care for a bird, you show your bird, you're good. And that's not what people want them for. People want them to have eggs, and to have fresh eggs as part of their fresh, like they do with their fresh garden in the backyard. And so he's kind of like your urban farmer. But then you need to have some restrictions to that, because you've got people living in close proximity in residential neighborhoods. So this strikes a good compromise. We can always go back and amend it if you want to reduce the number. But I think this is a good compromise all the way around. No one's going to be 100% happy, because some people want everything. And I think we've got this conversation went to cats to dogs and went all over the place. You're currently allowed 3 animals in your house, a cat or a dog, or a combination of both, but 3 is the maximum limit, just in case anybody wants to know. It's available in our bylaw. I think this is the right move to move forward. I'm sure we're going to hear from people, and I would hope council could stay strong and do something that regulates what's going on now in the community in a way that protects people in the residential neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Vanderstelt, first time, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, no, I'm in support of this. Urban farming is important, especially when prices of everything is going up. Now, if you've got 4 hens, I can hardly believe that someone's going to eat 3.5 eggs a day. This may be a good neighbor arrangement. You look after your birds properly, you look after the mess properly, and it's a revenue source of $300 a year. I don't think you're going to eat all the eggs, but you can share as well. From my perspective, it's probably a healthier thing than not having a revenue source in the backyard, and not along with all of the good things that are being proposed in terms of home gardening. I think this is a wise move. Hopefully I won't get tarred and feathered for saying so. But the bottom line is, I do have a question with regard to the comparator studies that our staff have willingly done. Has any other municipality gone for a 1 or a 2 year pilot project, just to be sure that it meets everyone's at least minimum standards? Jill, maybe you could comment.
Through the chair to Councillor Vanderstelt, I believe the City of Toronto has entered into a pilot project, and I want to say it's for a period of 1 year. It may be 2 years, but I do know the City of Toronto began a pilot project.
Okay, based on the same parameters, Jill, or slightly different?
Through the chair to Councillor Vanderstelt, very similar parameters. I believe their limit of hens was the same.
Okay. I do believe this is exactly what we're looking for, but please come back to me, Madam Chair. I may try that 2 year amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We've got Councillor Martin, second time, please.
Actually, I believe it's my first time, but regarding the kennels, the doggy daycare situation, does Bylaw have the tools they need to stop illegal doggy daycares in residential areas?
So through the chair to Councillor Martin, as far as the tools required to enforce, so we do have the animal control bylaw allows 3 animals per property, but running a business as a doggy daycare, we would probably lay charges as being non-compliant with the zoning bylaw for home occupation.
Okay, so we don't need to make any amendments to improve that situation then?
Sorry, through the chair to Councillor Martin, no, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. And when it comes to the chickens, we're going to have people who are responsible and look after their birds, take good care of them, clean up and make sure there isn't horrendous smell drifting through the neighborhood. But there's also going to be people who don't. And that's where the complaint basis comes in, and we send the bylaw inspector out to deal with that. Forcing somebody to have a membership in a club does nothing to guarantee that they will take proper care of their birds. All it does is force them to buy a membership to some club that they never intend on ever going to, but it allows them to have as many birds as they want right now, which can be really problematic. But hopefully people who decide to raise chickens do it responsibly, take care of them properly, and give consideration to the neighbors. And by eliminating roosters, it goes a long ways to solving the noise problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mccreary. I understand you have an amendment. Do you mind if we hear from Councillor Sless first, please? Go ahead, Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I have an amendment as well.
I've got Councillor Mccreary first in the line for amendments, please.
Okay, I'll wait and see if it's the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My amendment would be to request that staff provide wording at the council meeting to offer further regulation by requiring chicken owners to seek permission from abutting neighbors, and that staff also provide an opinion and a report to accompany same. Seconded by Councillor Martin, I think. And I'll speak to it if you like, Madam Chair. I think it's I think this is something that radically changes the nature of a neighborhood, like Airbnbs, like unfettered second and third suiting. And I do believe that for something that changes the way of life for folks in a neighborhood, you should have to seek permission from those immediately adjacent to the property before introducing farm activities. It's not like gardening. Gardening doesn't produce manure. Gardening waste does not necessarily attract vermin. And, you know, some people may have some strong objections, and I think it's only fair that people in the community not be subjected to an intrusion like this on their daily lives without first giving their blessing. And this isn't adding the amendment tonight, it's asking staff for the wording in the report to come to us at council.
All right, do we have anyone else to speak on the amendment to add that clause? Julia, can you put that up for us, please?
Through the chair, I'm just seeking clarification in regards to the motion, as Councillor Mccreary stated that he was seeking for a report of the same to come back to council at ratification time. However, that would placing that before council for ratification might not make sense at the time. Perhaps would the amendment be to require that staff be directed to require permission of all neighbors side and back in order to qualify for a license, and direct staff to amend the bylaw accordingly for council? Does that suit what Councillor Mccreary is seeking?
I wasn't necessarily intending to introduce it entirely tonight, but if that makes life easier for clerk staff, I'm happy to accede to that. That would put the amendment before us tonight rather than at council.
Okay, Councillor Wall on the amendment, please.
Is this thing on? Okay. Is there, I'm asking staff, is there anything else like this for any other bylaw? Like, the first thing that comes to mind is when somebody wants to build something, they have to send out notice to everything with like 120 meters right now. But is there anything, does anything exist like what Councillor Mccreary is proposing in this amendment exist? And if so, what?
Through the chair to Councillor Wall. So we do have something in the noise permit process that requires that you notify all neighbors or residences within, I think it's 120 meters of the event to take place. We also have something in the food trucks where if you'd like to implement a food truck, run a business there, you have to have permission from, I believe it's residences or property owners within 40 meters distance, property line to property line. So there are a few examples of this.
But for permanent?
Through the chair to Councillor Wall, yes, for specifically noise permits, noise exemption permits, we do require that the neighbors be advised, not necessarily that they grant permission, but that you have notified the neighborhood of the event to take place.
So then clarification on this, is this for permission or just advising?
I hear that it's for permission.
Okay, and then more clarification then, we're suggesting that we're going to vote on this tonight? That
Yes, the event, this is the amendment that we're talking about right now. This is an amendment being added to, to the motion that's on the table.
So then more clarification, I guess I'm asking staff because I can't crosstalk here. Would it, if you abut 6 neighbors, you have to have all 6 neighbors say yes, or you can't have it? And is there a mechanism like that in place already somewhere in the city?
Through the chair to Councillor Wall, I believe the closest thing we would have to that would be food trucks operating on private property. And if they're within, say, 40 meters of a restaurant, then we would require the restaurant to provide written permission or written blessing, if you will, that they don't oppose the food truck.
I don't know how I'm going to vote on this.
Thank you. Next, we have Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you. I was happy to second this amendment. We've all dealt with complaints of bad neighbors, someone who doesn't cut their grass, lets the weeds grow, doesn't clean up garbage in their backyard. If you have one of those neighbors, I feel sorry for you. It's unfortunate. But if you have one of those neighbors and they want to start raising chickens, you can just imagine the nightmare that's going to be. And they're not going to be looking after the birds because they don't look after their yard. You're going to have to deal with the smell constantly. And for neighbors who have pools, I mean, that's the last thing you want in the summer when you're trying to enjoy your pool, is to have to put up with a bad smell coming from your bad neighbor next door because he's got 4 chickens, maybe more, because he probably doesn't obey the bylaw. He's probably got 6 or 8, and the smell coming from that will be horrendous. So I think getting the permission of your immediate neighbors will help us to eliminate some of the bad neighbor situations and hopefully reduce the amount of complaints that we see in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderstelt, please.
This goes both ways. You can have that bad neighbor that's had bylaw called on them numerous times, and the good neighbor wants to go ahead and do something creative, and they got to go and ask permission from a bad neighbor to do something. I do know neighbors often go and say, hey, we're doing this and we're doing that, or showing, and it goes fine, but we always run. I know every one of us always ran into that one where we got a problem. But my problem here is that with the food trucks, we're talking about a commercial entity. And this is somewhat different what we're doing. I almost think that if you want to go and start asking for neighbors' permission, I think that's the whole purpose of a bylaw, is that it's complaint based. And so we need to have that complaint mechanism for the ability to enforce what we've said people can do with their operations. Remember, we have what's the other one? The other part is kennels. Is that have to require asking as well? So I think that if we I'm not at the end of this yet. I'm going to wait for the debate, but I'm almost at the point that if we pass what was originally in there, we need to have a mechanism, and I think that mechanism exists through bylaw where people can complain and say X, Y, Z is not being followed by the operator, whoever has the chickens. But if we do this way, where we're asking for permission, I think that we're going to go down a slope to the point where, you know, you need permission to have a dog, you need permission to have a cat, you need permission to have, and I don't think anybody wants to deal with that, let alone imagine trying to contact, if you do have a place that has 5 neighbors and you can contact 5 of them, but not 6 of them, and you can't get that on the form and how long it takes. There's just a lot, because it's come up tonight and in this way, there's just a lot there. I'm not ready. I'm going to wait for other people to say, but I understand the concern. I'm not certain that this is the solution.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Wow, this is really taking a turn. I thought we were trying to resolve an issue that we've already had. You know, currently we really have nothing except for, as long as you belong to a club, you can have as many birds as you want. Not a problem. And what we're trying to do is regulate this in a way that still allows those that have birds to have them under certain conditions, in fact, clean. And we heard some councillors say, well, you know, the neighbor will be upset. You'll imagine the stink that you'll have. And if you got a pool, it's going to stink. Well, that's the whole idea of this bylaw, is that won't happen because they'll be regulated. If you make this so onerous that you got to get 6 neighbors, people just won't bother. They'll just do it anyways. And then we'll have to wait for a complaint, and then we'll have staff go over there and say, you don't have permission from all your neighbors, so therefore you can't. And then the neighbor moves out, the next neighbor moves in. You got to get permission from the new neighbor that moved in. How long? And maybe you do. Maybe every year you got to go around and check with your neighbors. I'm not sure. I was happy with the report about how that would be managed, but just including it now as an amendment and then trying to move it forward, I think you're going to have 100 people at next council meeting raising concerns about what are you trying to do to me. Those that think there's only 30 chicken coops out there, you're sadly mistaken. There's a lot of them out there, a lot more. In fact, on the report, Norfolk does this, North Dumfries does it, Toronto does it, Waterloo does it, Quinte West does it, Niagara Falls, Newmarket, Guelph, Brampton, they all do this. And now you think you're going to add a clause. I mean, it'd be great, because then there isn't going to be any chickens. I guess if you don't want any chickens in the city, that's what you get. And I think there's people that do, and I think you'll see a lot of pushback on this amendment. I would prefer it be, as was originally suggested, that it simply be a report come back from staff to tell us how we could do this when this comes to council. You know, 2019. Think about it, folks. We did this. We brought this forward because of the problems we're having in 2019. We've all received calls and complaints. This is 3 years in the making. And now now all of a sudden we're interested enough to make amendments and make changes. Curious. Okay, fine, let's do that. But, you know, the public is waiting for us to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one concern, but it's a major one, and I think Councillor Van Tilburg kind of touched on it. There's a lot of times I get complaints from folks over something, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. But it turns out that it's just because they don't like the person that lives next door to them. And they don't get along, and it's been that way for a long time. And any chance they get, they try to create problems for the guy next door. And there's a lot of that. At least there is in Ward 2. Maybe no one else has these problems, but we certainly do here, where you have neighbor that doesn't like the neighbor next door. That goes on all the time. That if now they have to go there, like Councillor Van Tilburg said, and now ask for permission to do something, you know where that's going. And I guess that's my concern. I think you either vote to have the chickens be legal with conditions, or you vote not to have chickens. But you're almost voting them out of existence, I think, by putting this restriction on it. So I can't support the amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wall, please.
So this is definitely taken an interesting spiral. So most of my questions are about enforcement. I just cannot imagine a world in where this city has the resources to police this, to enforce this. What happens if somebody moves? So, I mean, I asked my neighbor behind me, hey, can I have a chicken coop? And he was like, yeah, I don't care, go ahead. And then 10 days later, he sells his home and a new person moves in. I got to go, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Can I have a chicken coop? I don't think this is realistic to enforce. I also agree with what Councillor Celeste said. I think we should just do A, or we should do B. And I learned a long time ago that if you want to know what somebody thinks, you ask them. If you just go around guessing what people think, you're just going to make people upset. And I can tell you one thing, if you ask somebody what they think, they'll tell you. And I think the concern is that if you have an owner who abuts 5 properties, they might put the chicken coop in and nobody cares. But you go and knock on their door and you ask them, can I have a chicken coop? 1 out of 5 is going to say no. And that just leads me to believe that if we do this, we're just telling people that they can't do this. So I don't know. I mean, part of me really likes this because you really shouldn't, you should really ask your neighbors like, hey, I want to be, but we don't live in a world of homeowner associations. You want condo rules, live in a condo, right? They can make rules where you can't have dogs. They can make rules where you can't have purple doors. They can make rules where you can't have a great big cannabis flag in your window. But in a regular neighborhood without a homeowner association, I think as long as the city says you can do it, you should be able to do it. And then we could change it if people don't like it. So yeah, I don't know. This is interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Mccreary, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Somebody was correct saying that probably should have just left it the way I introduced it. And after I speak, perhaps what I'll do is defer this to council awaiting a report from staff. But I would like to say before doing that, Madam Chair, that I'm guessing if you asked 100 people if they would like to raise chickens, you'd get a diversity. But if you asked 100 people if they want their neighbor to raise chickens next door to you, I'm thinking probably you'd get about 98 no's, okay? So I don't think it's correct to phrase this discussion in the way it's been phrased by some folks tonight. We're introducing the rearing of livestock into an urban situation. There's nothing in the amendment about dogs, cats, alligators. It's a bit of a stretch to think that we're going to then regulate people and their ownership of dogs. Dogs are a permitted activity in this city. Currently, we have something of an odd duck in terms of how we regulate the ability to rear birds here. I have heard from one constituent who would like to raise birds, and that constituent may very well be raising birds. I didn't care to investigate. But I think to say that people really want this is perhaps it's a fair assumption, but just by having this discussion tonight, we're going to generate a lot of interest. And as I think it was Councillor Carpenter said earlier, there's going to be a lot of people that want to do this. But as I said, there's probably a lot more people that don't want it next door to them than those that would like to perform this activity. So having said all that, Madam Chair, I would like to amend the amendment by referring this to staff for a report to come at council time. And I see Councillor Wall has just about dislocated his arm, getting his hand up to second, I believe. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you for that. All right, the amendment to the amendment is to refer back to staff. Do we have discussion on the referral? Councillor Vanderstelt.
Thank you, Chair Antosky. I just need a little bit of clarification on whether or not that means that the new bylaws would then be applied to rural settings in Ward 1, where there's an abundance livestock and chickens and ducks and whatnot. I think it's something that we have to be cognizant of. If we're going to make bylaws that apply to all of the areas in the built boundary of the city of Brantford, they will apply differently to different zoned areas. So just if we could make that as a note in the report that would come back from our staff to perhaps put some geographical restrictions on the enforcement of this bylaw. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Yes, to the referral. So all we're referring here is the amendment. Is that to be clear?
Yes.
Okay, and there already is a rural designation in the report.
Okay, I see no other speakers. I'm just going to add my 2 cents. I'm not going to support the referral. We already have this going on in our city. This is a way to deal with it, and I won't be voting in favor. So seeing no other speakers, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you. I was looking at the wrong screen. Thank you. Go ahead, Julia.
Sorry, through the chair. It's actually not in order to refer a pending amendment without the main motion as well. So an amendment to the amendment referring something unfortunately wouldn't apply in regards to this item. Secondly, if Councillor Mccreary was seeking to withdraw his original and where I had made the recommendation to change it to actually amending said bylaw, and rather than and withdraw said motion with the leave of the committee, a motion could come forwards to refer this item back to staff for a report to come forwards at a future date. Council will still need to ratify this request for a referral if committee decides at February's council meeting, which means the reporting timeline to come back will be March.
So Councillor Mccreary, do you wish to remove the original amendment?
I believe the clerk has synthesized exactly what my intent was all evening long, Madam Chair.
So to refer the entire item back to staff is where
Correct.
we are now.
For further comment with respect to the amendment which was introduced, withdrawn, reintroduced, and referred, and then laid on the table. Yes, thank you.
Exactly. All right. All right. So this is the referral. I see no further hands. Let's go to the vote on the referral.
Sorry, I do apologize again through the chair. Just to clarify who the mover of the or the seconder of the amendment or the referral would be. Would that be Councillor Wall?
It is Councillor Wall. Yes.
Thank you very much. The referral motion for 6.1.3 carries on a recorded vote of 7-3. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, and Wall. Those against, Councillors Carpenter, Antosky, and Van Tilburg.
All right. Councillor Sless, you had an amendment, and I believe, go ahead.
I did. Yes, I did. And I don't believe it's controversial. I would like to amend it that staff report back in 1 year with an update on the pitfalls, the successes, just a report on how this program is working a year later. Seeking a seconder.
We've got Councillor Utley as a seconder.
And just speak very briefly to it, Madam Chair. I think it's important that we measure this. We're trying something new, so let's at the end of the year see how it's working. So hopefully everybody can support this and get the information. Thank you.
Can I raise a point of order, please?
Yes, sorry, through to the chair. I think Julie is trying to get your attention as the matter was referred.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. That's my point. How can we make an amendment to something that's already been referred and voted on? Sorry.
Yep, no, that's fair. Thank you, committee, and thank you, Julia. So this item's been referred. We are finished with this item. Great. Next, we've already dealt with 6.1.4. Next is 6.1.5. That was separated, noting due to a conflict of interest with Mayor Davis and Councillor Wall, I believe. Do we have any discussion on this item, which is the enactment of a bylaw to regulate in respect of the fortification of and protective elements applied to land? Councillor Vanderstelt. Yep.
That's right. They get us confused all the time. I think it's the hair. Thank you. And thank you to staff for working so diligently on this, along with Brantford Regional or Brantford Police Service. So this came out of an abundance of concern from people who were contacting me with regard to the lack of privacy or perceived privacy in their own backyards, in their own pools, in their hot tubs, had cameras focused on some of the bedroom windows, the bathroom windows, their property from surrounding property owners. Many of these people feel extremely uncomfortable, feel as though they are under a microscope, feel as though they cannot be afforded their privacy on their property. In a bit of a process of discovery, we also found that they had no recourse to have the cameras from neighboring properties redirected, with the exception of forward-facing cameras. Obviously, everybody wants to keep an eye on their property, on their packages that are being delivered to the front porch, their property and belongings on the front yard, and their vehicles, of course. So we asked Brantford Police for clarification on that. And they came back with a very clear response and a very responsible response. We were looking for recommendations from them on how to apply these standards to forward-facing cameras. And the response was interesting, because it said they'll have to do it on a case-by-case basis. So we've just spent the last 45 minutes talking about neighbors that may or may not get along. In Brantford Police's experience of this, if you're on good terms with your neighbors and your neighbor's camera is covering the front of your house as well, the police may very well ask for footage of that camera, the neighbor's camera, to find out what happened on the neighbor's property. In some cases, neighbors don't get along, and they're not willing to share, they're not willing to help, they're not willing to assist, so they refuse access to the cameras. That being said, it's unfortunately, I don't want to give you very clear examples, because I don't want to identify the people who are going through this hardship. I can tell you that there are plenty of people who have had their privacy violated on a regular basis. And they would very much appreciate council's support in at least giving our bylaw enforcement teams the tool by which they would make sure that those offending behaviors would be dealt with in a timely fashion. One of the individuals who was going to speak to this may indeed come to council to speak to this. And it's an issue, it's a touchy and a dicey issue. I'm asking for council support. I understand that it's gone through the comparative study of what is normally understood to be fortification, as it's identified in other municipalities and applied in other municipalities. That too is a case-by-case basis, just to be sure that emergency services do have access to properties that are heavily fortified. I'll make it as simple as I can. But I am looking forward to a robust discussion, but support for those who identifiably have their privacy violated every day, every night, on a regular basis. It's time to give these people some well-earned relief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderstelt. Just before I go to you, Councillor Martin, I missed a note here that staff have provided wording for an amendment to clarify the exemptions associated with this bylaw. And so once we get through, there it is for everyone to take a look at, and we'll continue with the speaking order. But this is just clarifying some of the language. This is silent on this and something that we've had a lot of questions about. So this just clarifies it. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't able to read the full thing that was on the screen because there was another window in front of it, but just clarification through staff. If someone has a camera on the front of their property, it's okay if it captures the street as well, is it not?
Through the chair, Mike Lewis, legal counsel. Yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Okay, because my understanding from discussions with at least one individual who declared a conflict is because he felt his camera was capturing the street in front of his property, which I don't see as being a problem in this if that's not part of the bylaw. So I'm not sure I would support this if it prevented somebody from having a camera at the front of their property that maybe captured part of the street. That's part of the whole point of having a security system. However, having a camera pointing into someone else's backyard is definitely an intrusion of privacy, and I fully support eliminating that. And my understanding of this is it's not restricting the views of the street, so I fully support this.
Thank you, Councillor Martin, and that's what the clarification is specific to. Ms. Daniels? So sorry, your name was up. All right, we're on to Councillor Van Tilburg, please.
Yeah, I'm very happy to support this, and I appreciate all the work that Councillor Vanderstelt has put into this. Because as you may not be aware, as this was some time ago, I was very skeptical about where this might land because a significant portion of the community has cameras parked out to protect their property. But at the same time, what has been happening, and I don't know why this seems to be a relatively recent phenomenon, but it's not limited, and it's not by a few, it's by far too many people who, for whatever reason, believe that it is just okay, that they aren't doing any harm by pointing their cameras into the neighbors' backyards and watching them. And that's just wrong. I mean, that it is a violation. And not everyone is comfortable with that. And I don't know what it is. Maybe people are just so comfortable now with pulling out cell phones and videotaping everybody at any particular moment that they're not thinking of this, but it is not comfortable. So my main concern after protecting people's privacy in on their own property was how do we have that rule that protects people from protecting their property from criminal activity out there, because that is the greatest use of those cameras. That's what they're being used for. Neighbors do share that feed to one another, and it's very successful. So this report covers it all, and I think it's a really good job. And I think now people can say, you won't have this, I can do that, you can't stop me. We will be able to stop them, and we will be able to stop people from filming other people and neighbors' pools and stuff. It's just, look, it's just wrong. So I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. I see no other hands up. Julia, would you mind please putting the proposed amendment up there if anyone on the committee would be interested in moving this? It clarifies the language and includes some of what we're talking about in terms of sidewalks, and was moved by Councillor Martin, seeking a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sless. All right, is there any discussion on the amendment, which is basically including roadways and sidewalks, public property? All right, I see no hands. We'll vote on the amendment, please.
The amendment carries unanimously on recorded vote of 9-0. Those in favor, Councillors Sokoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, McCreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, and Van Tilburg.
Thank you. And as amended, any further speakers? Councillor Vanderstelt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of council. I truly appreciate this. You and I speak in the pejorative term, understand what it's like to be on camera. And we control the timing, we control the duration, we control many things about that. And I cannot tell you how much relief this is going to provide people who are tired of being spied on a regular basis. It's almost as if you're a prisoner in your own home, and it's unfair and it's unneighborly behavior. And it's something that needed correction quite some time ago with the proliferation of cameras. And I truly appreciate the support for this. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we'll call the vote on this item, please.
Item 6.1.5, enactment of bylaw to regulate in respect to lands and affiliations as amended, carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Councillor Sless, Carpenter, Vanderstelt, Antosky, Sokoli, Martin, Van Tilburg, McCreary, and Utley.
All right, thank you. Next, we're moving on to 6.1.6, which is Building Construction Process Review Task Force Report, January 2022. And Councillor Utley, I believe you have an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are two parts to this this item. There's a part one, which is development approvals process. There's an amendment to be added, and there's a number two, which is the security release process. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to read the amendment. It's moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless, and I have it here. That item 6.1.6, item 1 be amended by adding the following as clause H, that staff be directed to procure the cloud permit building module and associated implementation costs, that these costs be funded from the building department operating budget. I'd like to speak to this little, if I may, Madam Chair. This is a very important first step in our online, converting to an online process, which will make our process site plan approval process much more efficient. And I'm excited about this. I'd like to thank staff and especially Andy, our Chief Building Officer, for his work in bringing this forward, and also the staff of GM Heidi and others that were involved. So let's I hope we all get behind this amendment. It's a very important first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Do we have any speakers on the amendment? Councillor Carpenter, please.
Yeah, I'll support the amendment, but when it comes to council, will staff bring the cost of this to council so we can vote on it knowing the actual cost? Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, we'll go to vote. I'm sorry, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, can I see that amendment again? Yep.
Sorry, through the chair, we just seem to be having some technical difficulties in showing this item. Just please hold with me and I will get that up for you.
Yeah, so I do have a question, Madam Chair, and it would go to staff. There was a recent housing summit that Steve Clark, the Minister of Housing, and also the Premier were there with the mayors of the 33 largest cities in Ontario. And this was an initiative that was certainly discussed at great length there. And there was some indication beforehand that there may be monies made available for these kinds of programs that would assist municipalities in streamlining the development application process, and did a lot of lobbying personally before and after. And I think it may be that we'll be receiving some money. So I would like to know from staff, is there any indication that we might potentially be receiving some money from the province to fund these kinds of programs that are designed to improve and streamline our development application process?
Through the chair,
Anybody?
Heidi DeVries, General Manager, People, Legislative Services and Planning. Thank you very much, Mayor Davis. Actually, this is a great news story for the City of Brantford, and one of the reasons why staff has requested this amendment to the Building Construction Process Review Task Force report is because of the advocacy work you did at the Housing Summit with the province of Ontario and the recent funding announcement. Brantford has been selected as one of the municipalities that will be receiving that funding to the tune of approximately $1.7 million. So we're very excited to be bringing this forward. We're currently working through a report to council with respect to how we will be spending that allocation. I've never had a problem saying the word spending before. I also want to acknowledge as well the work that MPAC and AMO have done. They partnered on the procurement of the cloud permit system. It's a system that we were looking at already back in the summer after attending the AMO conference. The Chief Building Official, Andy McMahon, immediately moved to work with Scott Hall, our Director of IT Services, to look into this potential solution for the City of Brantford, knowing the recommendations most likely coming forward through the DAP report that was received by Council last year. So this is a sort of aligning of stars for our particular commission, where you see the recommendations of the DAP report being presented in an implementation plan to this particular task force, the Housing Summit, the province of Ontario's funding announcement, and the availability of this particular system coming together in a way that will allow us to accelerate the implementation plan and hopefully have that online application portal available for the development community as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heidi and Madam Chair. I mean, this is great news, and we've positioned ourselves. We did it. We didn't even know we were doing it, but through the leadership of Councillor Mccreary, Councillor Utley, Councillor Sless, and forming this task force, these recommendations that came out, and we've known for the last 6 months the greatest hurdle to implementing all these recommendations is the cost of doing a lot of it's IT software based. And it's just a very fortunate convergence of factors. The province was actually wanting to do this, and the municipalities are going to most benefit from this program are those that are ready, already know what they want to do and understand what it is they need to purchase. And I got to tell you, we actually probably are in a much better position than most other municipalities because of the hard work that staff and our task force has done. So I think it's all great, good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, we have Councillor Utley, second time.
Madam Chair, Councillor Carpenter had his hand up before me.
I go to in.
Okay.
First.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to add my thanks to staff and especially the Building Construction Task Force members. It's been a great team effort to get us this far. It's been a long journey, but I think we're really seeing some traction now with with the process improvements. And also, I'd like to recognize Mayor Davis for raising this issue with his mayoral group in Ontario. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Councillor. Oh, let's put his hand down. Okay. I see no further speakers on the amendment. We will go to the vote, please.
Councillor Mccreary, I'm just waiting for your vote.
You may put me down as in favor,
please.
Thank you. The amendment to item 616 carried unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Secoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Celeste, McCreary, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
All right, thank you. Now to the item as amended. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm often forgotten. Having been on the committee since its inception, it's not the first time that I've been forgotten. I'm used to it, quite frankly. But I just want to say that originally there was a recommendation by staff that we abolish this committee some time ago. And I think I met with Councillor Mccreary, maybe you'll remember this. We had a discussion and we did not abolish it when it came to council. The committee, it was voted on to abolish it. I was the only one that said, no, let's keep it. We got work to do. And then we realized we got a lot more work to do here. And there was a lot of work to do, and there's still a lot of work to do. But we're getting there. Like we had a consultant bring forward some of the best recommendations we'd ever seen. We're moving forward to have the development process streamlined so that the developers can move forward and development can happen, at the same time protecting the citizens and the city and the things that we want to do. And that's what the process is all about. And we really are getting there. And this resolution does just that. So just to remind the public, been on the committee since the very beginning. This is probably I think some council members call it the elimination of the red tape committee sometimes, but we've had it through 2 council terms now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Next, we're going to Councillor Mccreary, please.
I would like to follow up on Councillor Carpenter's commentary. He's not only been a member of the committee since its inception, but he's been instrumental in raising a number of issues. And Councillor Carpenter, I believe, was the lead with respect to ensuring that there was representation. There were public hearings with respect to including the clientele of said departments with respect to the findings that we eventually brought to council and the report that was eventually generated by the consultant, which has led to something in the way of an internal revolution in terms of how we think and act in the building and planning departments. So it's been a long road, and we are there. And I know it's being well received, not just within City Hall, but within the development community. And those of us that have been along for the ride since the beginning are happy to see the result now unfolding. And I'm sure there was no intent in omitting Councillor Carpenter's name. We all recognize his contribution, and I'm glad I was able to get a grin out of him tonight. And I look forward to his participation, continued participation in that committee and other committees as well. Councillor Carpenter, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis.
Yes, so let me lower my hand here. Yes, I must apologize, Councillor Carpenter. That was unintentional. And yes, I very clearly recall that my very first meeting, I called it the Red Tape Committee because it made it a lot easier to remember what it was all about. And yes, no question, I apologize to you for failing to mention your name. But I'd say that again, it's been really quite interesting to see that of the other 33 municipalities, there's only one that's kind of in the same position. Cambridge has done a lot of the same work and they're at the same stage as we are. And in order to be eligible for this funding, you have to show that you're in a position to make real change to your development review process, and you're going to spend the money for that purpose and do it within a certain time frame. So, like I said, it was a very fortunate circumstance that we as a team Bradford had worked hard on this for 2 terms, and particularly the last 2 years, really pushing it forward. And now we're going to see the results, and fortunately with the province helping us, it's going to make a real difference to our development review process, and not just for bigger builders and developers, but also for the smaller local builders who often have found it very hard to deal with all the requirements of the development review process. This should make it easier, streamlined, which results hopefully in more housing for our residents delivered quicker.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I see no further speakers in the queue, so we will go to the vote on this item as amended, please.
Item 616, Building Construction Process Task Force Report. Item 1 regarding the DAP process as amended carries unanimously on recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
All right, this brings us to resolutions. 7.1, coyote sightings. Councillor Utley, please.
Sorry, through the chair.
Yes.
We still have separated security release process, item 2 of the Building Construction Review Task Force report.
My apologies. Thank you, Julia. Councillor Utley.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think there's much to debate on this other than I think this will be the report coming back to us, and with input from our business community. I'm looking forward to the recommendations and findings, and then we can have a more fulsome debate at that time. So I think this, again, I'd like to thank staff for their help in formulating this resolution, and again with the input from the construction building task force.
Thank you, Councillor Utley. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Yes, I will support this. And I do remember at committee, again, Councillor Mccreary will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Councillor Mccreary asked about bonding and that we didn't have a process. But if anybody that's hasn't read it, they certainly should take a read of the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force report that came out yesterday. I have a copy of it. Anybody wants one, just email me and I'll send it back to you. It recommends that discussion about bonding and its security deposits and how they're handled, and recommends a number of things. And of course, some that you'll like and some that you won't, but worth a look at. So just wanted to make sure that we were, again, as the mayor said, we were ahead of the game. We were actually ahead of the game from what the province was doing in some of these things, and we should be recognized as a community. Sometimes, I guess, what's happened in our community over this term of council, some things happened that were divided the community drastically, and then it sort of took us away from the focus of a lot of good things that are happening in this term of council, and this is one of them. And I would thank the leadership, current leadership, was Councillor Utley, so I want to thank him for bringing it forward, and I'll support it.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. I see no further speakers. We will take the vote on this, please.
Building Construction Process Review Task Force, item 2 regarding security release process is approved unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
Thank you. Now that we've had the practice run at this, Councillor Utley, 7.1 resolution, coyote sightings, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I hope that our furry friends don't provoke as much debate as with our feathered friends in the community. So with this moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Sless, whereas there have been numerous sightings of coyotes in the city, and whereas citizens are concerned about the potential danger of coyotes attacking small children, pets, and related risks of rabies, and whereas the city is limited in our ability to track the increasing number of coyotes. Now, therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to A, develop a service request whereby members of the community can notify the city of coyote sightings and suspected deaths of deer and small animals in the city via an online submission form and on the city's website to determine how widespread sightings are over a 3-month period. And B, contact the Ministry of Natural Resources to request their support in managing the coyote population in the city. And C, develop a public awareness education campaign to promote the new reporting tool and to provide tips for residents regarding how to respond and react to potential close contact with coyotes in their neighborhoods. And D, upon completion of the data collection, provide council and the MNR with a memo outlining the findings. Madam Chair, I've received 5 or 6 emails, phone calls from Ward 2 residents concerned about seeing coyotes in their neighborhood. I hear some that say, wow, it's really keeping the cat population down. Another said it's going through all our garbage. I think other people really are genuinely affected about letting their cats out and small dogs. And, with those with small children, I'd be concerned as well if there were coyotes in the neighborhood. So I think the first thing here is to build a picture within our community of how widespread coyotes are in the community, ward by ward, and it'll be interesting to see how that map of when that report comes back to us. If I urge councillors and the mayor, if they do receive reports of coyote sightings, is to send that report to staff so that they can document it and localize where the animal has been seen. One of the things that the public should be very aware of is not laying out food or feeding or approaching coyotes. They are wild, they are shy, but if provoked, they may react in a different way to what you think they might. And if you put out food for them, they're going to keep coming back, like squirrels do if you put out birds with bird feeders. So I think there needs to be an education program when we get the findings, and I look forward to that. And thank staff for their input to this resolution. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Atley. Councillor Sless, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it's a widespread phenomenon that's going on. If you look at the neighborhood association sites on Facebook, every day that there's sightings. West Branch gets a lot of them. Mayfair gets a lot of them. Mayfair, Myrtleville area, lots there. On my street, there's a lady puts it on there almost every morning. One runs down the street that I live on, going to to Devon Park. Down in Homedale on the trails down by Waterworks Park, it's very common to see 3 or 4 in a group on the trails. So it's something, it's man-made. We're developing so fast, we're chasing them out of their natural habitat, and they've got to go somewhere. And they're looking for food. They just want to survive. And unfortunately, that they're hitting residential areas. They're looking for food, and I don't know. It's a shame, really, that it's come to this. But they've got nowhere to go, and they're just they're just trying to survive. So, from what I understand, and there's a lot of expertise on Facebook of folks that have researched, because they're concerned, and they say if you do encounter one, don't run. Make yourself as big as you can. Put your hands above your head and make a lot of noise, and that will tend to make them shy away from you. But if you run, they sense weakness and they can come after you. So there's a lot to be learned, and I think this is a good initiative to at least get a handle on where most of it's happening and how often it's happening. I tend to think there's a lot of it, and it's happening constantly. But the report will show us that, and working with the ministry, hopefully we can find a solution. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderstelt, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Councillor Sless, for the coyote etiquette. You're absolutely right. It works for me. It was the 3-month recommendation of an observance period. Did that come from the Ministry of Natural Resources, or was that another source? But I guess the root of my question is, should it be a longer observation period? Not sure who I'm asking this question from.
Who do we have on staff to respond to that?
Sorry, can't hear you, Maria. Thank you.
Sorry. Through the chair, I can take that. Again, Maria Visaki, Director of Communications and Community Engagement. Councillor Vanderstelt, I'm working on the education piece primarily from this resolution, and just to make council aware, we have actually started the communication on this because we were getting calls into the contact center about sightings. We also started to track those reports. So the customer contact center is actually keeping a tally of the reporting and the locations of where residents are reporting that they're seeing coyotes. That will actually form the report that comes back to council, and that is shared with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So that's the form piece. The education started earlier. I believe the 3 months was chosen because it tends to be a seasonal occurrence where they come out into residential areas, and there seems to be a connection with when there is a lot of snowfall, because they get disoriented and the roads and residential areas look a lot like their natural habitat because everything is white. So I think that was the thinking behind doing it for a 3-month period, and that tracking has already started. It started in mid-January.
Wonderful. I knew you'd be ahead of the game, Maria. Thank you so much. And thank you to the councillors for bringing this forward. When it first hit Cherry Hill Lane in my first term of council, Tanya will remember well all the work we had to do to get to a solution there. And hopefully we can find a similar solution in this case. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, I don't know what solution you're going to find, but February and March is breeding season, so you're out walking your dog. Be careful. That's why you're seeing so many of them in February and March, and you will probably see more as the weather gets a little warmer. So they're coming from any place we have woods, and we have lots of natural woods area. They haven't been hunted, or there hasn't been a cull in a long time, and they've been expanding. I don't think it's so much we're growing into their areas. I mean, we are doing some of that, but certainly they're breeding, and they're raised and they're growing in numbers, and we're seeing more of them as part of our community. And as was already said, some of the education can be not putting food out. Certainly don't you don't have to put even food in your garbage. We'll draw them near, but they're mostly they're coming out because they're breeding. They're shy animals normally, but when they're breeding, and if you've got a small dog, they may see that as aggressive, and they're more aggressive when they're breeding. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Just before we go to second time speakers, I'm going to take a turn. And I may offer a little bit of a different perspective. There are also many residents out there that are concerned with the tracking, not necessarily for the gathering of information, but what the purpose of that tracking may be. So I'd like to make sure that when we are putting the education out there, that there's education about that as well. And being careful to say that although we want to be concerned, that just the sightings of coyotes does not equal danger. I think we have a combination of two. The wording in here is track the increasing numbers of coyotes. Maybe this is where the tracking will come in handy. I'm not sure if it's an increasing number or we're seeing more because we are taking their habitat. So I think there's concern on both sides of this. I'd like to know more about the intent of what the intention of the gathering of the information is, and what is expected to be done with that. So even if there's a memo, or if we can follow up with that, I would appreciate that. Okay, going to second time speakers, we've got Councillor Utley, please.
I'm still a first time speaker.
Councillor
Yes, you're right. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Van Tilburg, go ahead.
Thank you. And I do think Maria is on point. Information and education first. While we may assume we're seeing a lot more coyotes, and then assuming therefore that means there are a lot more coyotes, there was always been a lot of coyotes in this city. Practically everywhere I've lived in this city, I've seen coyotes, and I think a lot of people have seen coyotes over the years. The difference now is that we have cameras, we have social media, we have ways, and sometimes that social media makes that one sighting of maybe one coyote be 5, be 10, be, you know, whatever. So it's out there. And I think this, I appreciate this identification and tracking, and let's get a grasp of what we got out there. Because I think that's how, when people realize that, yes, these animals are shy, that no, you should not be feeding them, because that can put them at harm. That can change the dynamic of everything. So it's really important that we allow people to know, because a lot of people, the first time that they ever encounter, see a coyote, I will receive phone calls, you know, and we've got to do these things. And of course, generally when you read the postings along the trails and stuff, and it tells you how to behave with a coyote and what to do, those are the things to follow. And we've got to keep reinforcing that message, because if we take it to the point where we're looking at coyotes and we're fearful of coyotes, and we shouldn't be, that's the wrong line to go. And if we do have people that start thinking, oh, they're wonderful, cute, cuddly animals, that's also the wrong line to go if you're going to start feeding them, because that's where the interaction with humans and wildlife can cause a problem. And then we don't know how the wildlife's going to behave. Right now, they behave the way they're supposed to behave. They're trying to survive, and if they see you, they tend to run away. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So very much supportive, and I really like what we're going to do with this.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Otley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to add an amendment to B. Contact the Ministry of Natural Resources to request their support in managing the coyote population. I'd like to add the word in support in tracking and managing the coyote population. I think that fits exactly what Councillor Van Tilburg just said, that, you know, you could have, 5 pictures of a coyote, the same coyote, but in 5 different places. So by tagging the animals in various parts of the city, that would give us a pretty good idea of what their range is within the city and probably county as well. So I think that will be that's definitely something that M&R can help us with. And the 3 months is really to get just a picture in time of the movements of coyotes in the city. We can continue this program for months or years to come, if that's the desire of council. So I think it's really just to get a snapshot, and let's see what comes back to us, and then we can take appropriate action and recommendations at that time. So I thank you for listening and for your support. Thank you.
So, Councillor Otley, you want to move that wording change? Could that be friendly?
If that's agreeable with if I need a second, I'm sure my ward mate will.
Yes, I see a nodding, so that's friendly.
It's really including the word tracking and or tagging and managing. I'm not sure what the exact wording is, but I'm sure staff will come up with the right word.
Thank you. Have you got that, Julia?
Yes, thank you. Friendly amendment to add tracking / tagging and managing to clause B.
Terrific, thank you. All right, I see no further hands, so we will move to the vote on this item, please.
Item 7.1, coyote sightings, carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sakoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Celeste, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
Thank you. The next resolution we have is dissolve the OLT. This is yours, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's a fairly lengthy read, but moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg. Whereas municipalities across the province collectively spend millions of dollars of taxpayers' money and municipal resources developing official plans that meet current provincial planning policy. And whereas an official plan is is developed through months of public consultation to ensure that future planning and development will meet the specific needs of the corporation of the city of Brantford. And whereas our official plan includes intensification policies that encourage development of the missing middle or gentle density to meet the need for attainable housing in our community. And whereas our official plan is ultimately approved by the province. And whereas it is within the legislative purview of municipal council to approve official plan amendments or zoning bylaw changes that better the community or fit within the vision of the city of Brantford's official plan. Whereas it also within legislative purview of municipal councils to deny official plan amendments or zoning bylaw changes that do not better the community or do not fit within the vision of the city of Brantford's official plan. And whereas municipal planning decisions may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, known as the OLT, formerly the Ontario Municipal Board, an unelected appointed body that is not accountable to the residents of the city of Brantford. And whereas the OLT has the authority to make a final decision on planning matters based on a standard of best planning outcome and not strictly whether the proposed development is in compliance with the municipal official plans or the provincial planning policies. And whereas all saving planning decisions made by municipal councils are subject to appeal by judicial review on such appeals are limited to questions of law and or process. And where Ontario is the only province in Canada that empowers a separate adjudicative tribunal to review and overrule local decisions applying provincially approved plans. And whereas towns and cities across the province are repeatedly forced to spend millions of dollars defending official plans that have already been approved by the province in expensive, time-consuming, and often futile OLT hearings. And whereas lengthy, costly OLT hearing acts as a barrier to the development of attainable housing. Now, therefore, be resolved that the City of Brantford requests that the government of Ontario dissolve the OLT immediately, thereby eliminating one of the most significant sources of red tape delaying the development of more attainable housing in Ontario. And B, that a copy of the motion be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Leader of the Opposition, the leaders of the Liberal and Green Party, all MPPs in the province of Ontario, the large urban mayors caucus of Ontario, the small urban mayors of regional chairs of Ontario, and that a copy of this motion be sent to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and to all Ontario municipalities for their consideration. I'm just speaking of this, council members may remember last term of council, there was a committee that was struck by Tom Maracas, who chaired it, and he's now the mayor of Aurora. He was a councillor then, and there was 13 councillors that volunteered to sit on the committee to review what was then the OMB. And the logic was that request the province then to eliminate the OMB from making rulings on decisions of council unless they were in violation of the actual municipal act or the planning act or their own particular planning policies. And that did happen. Of course, that was reversed when the government changed, and we now still have the OLT there. So now some may argue that it's a double-edged sword, and it is. In fact, the development, sometimes the council makes a decision and the development community doesn't like it, and it goes to the OLT. It files an appeal, and it hires lawyers, and then we have to hire lawyers and planners to defend our decision, and it's a costly amount of money wasted and spent. In fact, sometimes when we talk about planning issues, and we've dealt with a number of them this year, but we're making planning changes, parking. Remember, we did parking, we did bus passes instead of parking. We make decisions locally that may move something forward or not, and then that decision can be overturned by an unelected body, and that's the reason this is here. Now, you may want to look at the new Planning Act, because the new Planning Act recommendation, not new Planning Act, sorry, the new recommendations from the Housing Authority, it recommends actually, the other side of that sword, sorry, is the public can appeal any decision that council makes, usually at a cost of, I think, about $400 to apply to appeal now. And then that becomes a lengthy process and it's backlogged the OLT. They're already backlogged over 1,000 cases, as I understand it. And what that does is it means that they're backlogged and the case can't get heard for a couple of years, and so the development is delayed. And that process does happen, and it is happening. So this would eliminate that process. Now, the province is looking at making changes to that. If you read the I think I sent it to all members of council. I know I sent it out to you. If you didn't get it, then ask me and I'll send it to you again. But the province is making recommendations to change that. They call it the NIMBYism, but that eliminates the public from filing complaints
I'm sorry, Councillor Carpenter, do you want me to put you back on the list?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Tilburg, please.
Thought I'd give Councillor Carpenter a break in his speaking. I believe that this resolution puts the decision-making back in the hands of the municipalities where it belongs. We have to provide our plans to the province, and they are agreed to. We must follow them. And a lot of what happens after the fact is that one side or the other decides that they're going to go to appeal, and everything gets delayed. And we know this. We see this over and over again. So it is red tape. It does become a bit of a game. The truth is that we all end up, I don't know how many times when we've said it, it's going to go to the OMB. We already know what the outcome is going to be. There's no surprise coming. And so everybody's wasting a lot of money and a lot of time for basically decisions that were already laid out at council based on our plans. It's just, you just don't see those things flip. So then you wonder, what is this all about? And when you look across and see, no other province has this feature. And we know that we are having a problem meeting the needs of the public, that certain delays for arbitrary reasons are unnecessary. And I believe that as councillors, and as with all of our talented staff around us, that we can make the appropriate decisions for our community. And when we make our plans, we try to make them based on how we view the look of our community. That's very local. And we've been seeing a top-down approach from the province, changing stuff on us and telling us how things are going to be. And so, I mean, that's probably my other fear about this, is that we will even have less control and probably more claims as people realize the province is going to tell us what your city is going to look like, what your neighborhood's going to look like. They're going to have the power to change everything. We want to make those same changes too. We have the same needs to be met. We have the plans and zoning, but we can be overruled by so many people. And at the end of the day, it comes back the way it should be. So I think ironically, Councillor Carpenter and I were probably approaching this from different angles for different needs. And it's kind of always been in the back of my mind. But I think when you look at the big picture, the double-edged sword, it's time to put the sword away. And I think this is the best way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's a lot of assumptions in the preamble with this that just don't hold water. It's assumed that every council always follows their official plan. We've seen it many times where council has gone against our staff's recommendation. And I've seen in camera where somebody's actually said, well, the community doesn't want this project. We'll vote against it. They'll appeal it. They'll win at the OMB and it'll get built, which is what we want in the first place. Well, without an appeal process, those projects don't go forward. that affordable housing doesn't get built. So to say that this appeal process is standing in the way of affordable housing is exactly the opposite. By not having an appeal process, a lot of affordable housing will be denied by councils that don't follow their official plan, that don't follow the recommendation of their planners, who then have to hire outside planners to fight the appeal. And we've seen that. It's been an expense that we've had to pay because our own planners can't go and give testimony at the appeal because their testimony is counter to what we're trying to do because we didn't do what they recommended. So there's a lot of mistakes in the assumptions in this. And without an appeal process, there's a lot of good projects that won't go forward. So I can't support this at all. I think this is the wrong direction to go. And I hope we're not the only community that doesn't do this because this is leading to disaster.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Utley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the mover. I wonder if we could amend C to include the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the Home Builders Association, and BRIA.
Friendly.
Thank you.
Friendly.
Mayor Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you. Hope you can hear me. I've had some problems with my microphone, but you know, this is a very legitimate debate. It's been going across the province now for a number of years, different approaches. And you know, this resolution comes to us from the mayor of Aurora. He distributed it. And my concern with this, and in some ways I agree with Councillor Martin, is I think it's really driven by a particular circumstance in Aurora and will cause problems if it's applied across the province. And you know, what's it about? Well, I think you can get a clue from the preamble. Some of the words here used are a barrier to the development of attainable housing. Another word, our official policy contains policies that encourage the development of the missing middle or gentle density to meet the needs of attainable housing. Goes on to say cities are spending millions of dollars defending official plans and are time consuming and often futile OLT hearings. And the last paragraph being the most important. Whereas lengthy, costly OLT hearings act as a barrier to the development of attainable housing. You know, I got to assume from the words in the preamble that what's happening there in Aurora must be that that there must be neighborhood groups or resident groups that are opposed to Aurora doing something in the official plan that increases density to achieve attainable housing. And I assume then that that's what the concern is there. And so I think but the problem with that then is if you don't have an appeal process and you have residents that are legitimately concerned about a particular proposal, and if a council doesn't respond to that, you're not giving them, those residents, an opportunity to deal with a council that's not seeing things their way. And in fact, you know, I agree that you know, if the goal is trying to to increase the amount of attainable or affordable housing, if that's the intent, it does seem from the preamble. Well, the problem is it may in fact result in the exact opposite, because you know, if you have a council that for some reason is opposed to any attempt to impose greater densities or achieve attainable housing through that process, you then deny the appeal process to groups like, say, Habitat for Humanity, that you know often want to establish developments for affordable, attainable housing that involve greater density. And so, if they run up against a council that doesn't believe in helping or assisting in achieving attainable or affordable housing, then guess what? You're not going to achieve that goal of attainable housing. And that appears to be what the purpose of this resolution is to deal with that kind of NIMBYism. But I think there's a more basic problem with this resolution, as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, at its core is an assumption that municipal councils always make perfect decisions, free from mistakes, and therefore should never be subject to an administrative review or or appeal process. And I know that the proponents of this resolution, Aurora, said, well, but hey, you can still appeal to a court. Well, that's not a very good process. That's extremely time consuming. It's very, very expensive. And the way in which you can appeal, the grounds are extremely limited to go to court. It has to be a grievous error of law or on the facts. And so, whereas on the OLT, the standard is that it's a flawed or it's a wrong decision. So I can't support this resolution. I think I understand the intent, but I don't think this is the best way to go at it. In fact, if you listen to those that have spent a lot of time looking at
Mayor
this,
Davis.
et cetera, yes, put me down for a second time.
Thank you. I'll put you back in.
Because the system right now isn't perfect and there are ways to improve it. I think that can achieve the same end.
All right. Next, we have Councillor Wall, please.
Thank you, Chair Antosky. So the thing about roosters is, no, sorry. I don't want to pretend like a lot of hard work didn't go into this motion and this resolution, but I'd like to share what I don't like about it. So the first thing is, in the entire time I've been on council, never had a constituent come to me and say, hey, Councillor Wall, I think you should tell the Ontario government to dissolve the OLT. And I find myself in a really peculiar position because unless the will of the people, like an overwhelming majority of the people want me to do this, I don't see how this is what the people elected me to vote on. Like, this motion is coming to us as a recommendation from somebody in another city with an entirely unique set of situations, asking me as a city councillor to vote on an item that's going to impact our community in ways that I might not even be able to understand, and nobody in my community asked me to do it. So I would never support this motion right now in this moment without some consultation with the community, with the neighborhood associations, with the Chamber of Commerce, with interested parties in this, and then I would take the time to form an opinion based on that. And then I would vote in favor or against based on that data. So right now, I can't find myself in a position to support that. I'm not supporting it because I don't think it's right or wrong, or I agree with it or disagree with it. I think my position is simply this: no one asked me to. This was a request from somebody who has no connection to this community to vote on. Second concern. They want us to just vote on something to make this huge decision. What are they proposing we do instead? Like, if you're going to come to me and tell me to participate in a discussion like this, at least propose an alternative, propose something, but don't just say, do this. And I don't know what that is because I haven't had enough time to think about it and to discuss it, like I said in my first point. And then the third thing, we have what's called, Clerks explains it to me, it's a quasi-judicial committee here in Brantford, where those people are appointed to the committee. They are not elected to the committee, but I guess an appointment and elect, it doesn't matter. The moral of the story is yes, the people who are on the OTL should be accountable for their decisions, and perhaps an option is for those people to be elected, because I can tell you one thing, I am held accountable for the decisions that this council makes everywhere I go, every time I grocery shop, every time I grab a coffee at Coffee Culture or Tim Hortons or one of our incredible local cafes. The decisions we make, we are held accountable for. And I know that staff are held accountable for those decisions too, but there's like a different kind of accountability between the politicians and staff. Obviously, you can see what's happening with accountability with politicians right now in this country. So, moral of the story, this is probably a great resolution. I absolutely don't think it's the right resolution that this council should be voting on or participating in right now, because why? Why are we doing it? Is there a need for this in our community? So I'm not suggesting a referral or a deferral in my first speaking opportunity, but perhaps that's the way to go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Vanderstelt, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There have been some comments about the relevance of why we should be subject to the OLT in Ontario as opposed to other provinces in the country of Canada. Now, 50% of the population of Canada lives in a very small sliver of Southern Ontario and part of Quebec. Nowhere will you find the population densities as high as they are in this area. So I support the inclusion of the OLT in our discussions about how we are to develop, because nowhere across Canada will you see as prevalent an argument as the NIMBY or the NIMFY argument, because we're piled upon one another quite closely here. So I support the OLT's primary notion that it has to be a separate body that can make it up determinations based on the rules that the province set to begin with. And if we look at it from that perspective, when the province provides that body at which we can determine fault or blame or degrees of rightness, that is a body that is provided for us. In the absence of a logical alternative, which I can only assume will be court or judicial review, where there's multiple plaintiffs who no longer have an option because no other option was provided, come forward and make the assertion that something should or should not be happening in the community, and the council should or should not be held responsible for it happening or not. The costs associated with those multiple actions suggests to me that if I supported this without a viable alternative, without answers on how much that viable alternative will cost the municipality, I would, in a sense, be not protecting the municipality from another, judicial review that says nothing to us. So I can't, on those bases, support the resolution as it's written. Perhaps there's another permutation of it that will come forward, but as it stands, I do support that independent body to legislate what the province has given us to begin with. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sless, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I read a thing this morning online, and I think it's what Councillor Carpenter is talking about, the province's task force on I'm not sure the proper name of it was, but I was horrified when I was reading it, and it really scared me. Some of the things that they're contemplating. I tend to think that the way the article was written, that it's probably something that's moving forward, but it's going to change the way cities look. It's going to change the way we live. It's going to change everything that we take today as normal. It won't be. Everything that is coming is abnormal to what we call normal. So that concerns me. And I guess to further muddy that, to start, it's almost when I read that it doesn't really matter what we do. We're not in a good position. We're going to have somebody dictating what's going on in our community from outside the community, and that's just that's the way the article read. I haven't read the report in its total. I read somebody's synopsis of it, so I'm going by what I read, and by what I read, the future of development is going to be very different than what I've known it for the time I've been on council. Things are really going to change if this thing is implemented. So I'm not sure that tampering with the status quo is going to do us any good, because the status quo isn't going to be the status quo anyway. So I'm not sure what we're heading into other than scary waters. I don't want to muddy them by trying to change the status quo today when it's all going to be changed again tomorrow anyway. So this could be the right thing to do. I honestly don't know. I don't have an opinion on that, to be quite honest, but it's something that might be appropriate once we see what's going to happen to this task force recommendations. And I think that's coming fairly soon. So I won't be supporting this evening, but I'll certainly be watching to see what comes down the pipe to us from Queen's Park, because it sure sounded like it's coming. So I'll brace myself for that and hope that no change happens, because I think no change would be a good thing from what I read. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderstelt, please.
Yeah, and I have to follow up on Councillor Sless's comments. When Richard brought this to me to look at, because I've had these battles in the past, I thought, well, we've got a meeting of the minds here. And it was just this morning, I saw that same article, Councillor Sless, and it should concern us all. It really should. We'll be upside down. And it looks like a top-down dictatorship directive of how our neighborhoods are going to look. And it scares me. I actually messaged Councillor Carpenter saying, I believe that the announcement today could really undermine this resolution. I sent that to him, but I still have we brought this forward. That is coming. They're going to put that formal announcement through. And so what I was thinking is that perhaps rather than killing this right now, I would rather not see this proposal be killed. If we can see what comes down the pipes officially, and then we can bring this back if need be. So if I could put a deferral on this for a cycle.
A seconder for a deferral? Okay.
Madam Chair, can we wait till everybody's spoken and then bring it back to the councillor?
We certainly can. I don't see any hands in the queue right now. I know that. Oh, thank you, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And, deferral may make sense, especially I was interested in wanting to get input from staff and our legal department on the resolution, but so that could be included in it. But I just want to say this, that, this Affordability Housing Task Force was really just a think tank, the province commission to do certain things. I mean, yes, they released a report this morning, and there's going to be a full, I believe if I read what I'm reading, there's going to be a full consultation process. But that's not the issue tonight. I think the issue tonight is there to be a tribunal that you can appeal decisions of municipal councils in respect to planning matters. And no matter what the province does or what the Planning Act has changed, I think there's always going to be a need for a review of planning decisions. But I'd say this, I mean, this resolution deals with the current system, and I agree with the proponents. The current system isn't perfect by a long shot. And I think the preferred way to deal with it is, instead of just simply doing away with the land tribunal, is improving it. And some combination of what the previous provincial government had done, which was, limit the right of a developer or a resident to file an appeal and put before the Ontario Land Tribunal something that was entirely different than what was before the council. And I mean, that's the problem, a big problem with this current system. You can have a developer that submits a proposal to council, and then when they file an appeal, they present something that's entirely different. And that, to me, doesn't make any sense. And the right of appeal should be limited to what you put in front of the council or some reasonable modification of it. And that's been a big problem, I think, with this new system, and is part of the reason for the backlog. And, I think it's essential to let residents or developers or property owners have at least some way in which they can take an appeal from a decision of council that they think is in some way flawed or wrong. But anyways, I'd be supporting a deferral to get more information and see if the lay of the land is really going to be changing.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, so my last on the agenda then for the deferral as the mover. Okay, I'll assume.
I'm sorry, Councillor Carpenter, I just didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I said, am I last on the wrap before the deferral?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, I agree the deferral is especially since the task force report that came out today. And I want all members of council to absorb what's in there and at least get some opinions. Councillor Sless, I'm glad you read it, or at least brief what the points are. There's 55 recommendations in there. I just want to give the public some idea that as a right, residential housing can go up to 4 units and up to 4 stories on a single lot. Remember the duplex and the triplexes that we have now in our neighborhoods? This is going up to 4 units and 4 stories. That's what the recommendation is. And permit the conversion of properties to we have boarding houses now where you have to have a zoning permission to have a boarding house. And one of the recommendations is that every house can be a boarding house. If you've got a bedroom, you can rent it out. And that's also one of the recommendations is that if you want to appeal this process, Mr. Mayor, your speaker's on, and I'm hearing a lot of rattling.
Oh, sorry.
No offense. The other thing is the process, $10,000 to appeal. So I'm glad we talk about the neighborhood, your local residents. We had the issue with the apartment building on Fairview Drive. Residents were not happy with that decision. They would have to come up with $10,000 if this one of these recommendations gets passed for them to appeal a decision of council. And I understand the province wants to move forward and get as many houses built and everybody living and it also recommends unlimited height restrictions and no parking requirement. It also limits parkland. It also limits contributions to reserve funds. So that I get it. The recommendation here is to move a lot of things forward fast because they think the more we build, the cheaper it will get. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's what someone believes in this report. That we would be overruled. The other thing I want to point out is we just finished our official plan. We did a pretty good job of almost a wide open official plan. And we should be proud of. We're one of the first municipalities in Ontario to have that official plan approved by the province. That is very forward thinking as far as intensification corridors and all those things that we wanted to do to create housing and promote housing. And we've got the committee that resolution we just passed tonight about speeding up the process and digitizing the process, making we're leaders here. So I'm happy to defer this until we've really sunk in what the province is trying to do here. I suspect you won't see anything done by the province until after the end of June. Election season starts March 31st and ends at the end of June, and then we won't see anything till the next government's in place. That's my guess, but it's only a guess. So I'll be happy to defer to my seconder, Councillor Van Tilburg, who wants to move a deferral. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Your referral time and place.
Well, I don't know if Councillor Carpenter wanted that to go a little further than what I was thinking. I was going to do one cycle, but perhaps it may need to go further than that. 2 cycles.
All right. Then we will vote on the deferral. I don't know. Time and place, Councillor Wall. Yep, go ahead.
Wouldn't it make sense to do it after the election? Like, what if the whole provincial government changes?
Would someone on staff like to answer that? I don't know how we.
It's not debatable, right?
It's yeah.
Time and place, so it's two cycles.
Yeah, it's 2 cycles. Sorry, they're correct. We can't. It's not debatable.
So what's the comment? So my commentary on time and place is that this should happen after the election. I don't know. I don't know what we're talking about then.
Go ahead, Ms. Daniels.
Through the chair to the councillor, the only thing that I would provide to that context is that you have a very limited meeting schedule commencing in July based on a municipal election. So if you're deferring until after that set in time, you may not actually have the meeting cycle that you're anticipating. That would just be my advice.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. We will go to the vote.
Through the chair, may I just get the seconder on the deferral motion again? I missed that. Councillor Carpenter, thank you.
Yes.
And Councillor Wall?
Yes.
Thank you. The deferral motion for item 7.2 carried on a recorded vote of 8-3. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, and Wall. Those against, Councillors Martin, Mccreary, and Sicoli.
All right. Thank you. We have an additional resolution submitted, which will require a 2/3 vote to waive the rules. Councillor Mccreary, would you please move your motion to waive the rules and state your seconder?
Certainly, Madam Chair, and thank you. The seconder will be Councillor Martin. The resolution reads as follows: that Section 1511(5) of Chapter 15 of the City of Brantford Municipal Code be waived, in order to introduce the following resolution without having been included on an agenda and without prior notice. Whereas in 2020, the city of Brantford engaged Colliers to review previous assessments to reconfirm Brantford Police Station needs and to investigate options available to accommodate future growth. And whereas Colliers was re-engaged later in 2020 to investigate in more detail the expansion on the current location. And whereas based on the above, the city of Brantford has approved a total capital budget of $39 million. And whereas staff reports 2021-47 update on Brantford Police Services facility accommodation plans and 2021-321 Brantford Police Services facility redevelopment funding sources have been presented to and approved by council and the Police Services Board. And whereas the city of Brantford has had success in establishing accommodation steering committees in the past with the Wayne Gretzky Sports Complex, the building which we inhabit today, some of us at Walter Gretzky Golf Center. Now, therefore, be it resolved that a task force be established and named the Police Station Task Force, and B, that the following 3 members of council be appointed to the Police Station Task Force. Item 1, myself. Item number 2, Councillor Martin. And item number 3, a third councillor to be named this evening. And C, that the Brantford Police Services Board be requested to appoint the Brantford Police Services Board Chair, Mark Littell, to the Police Station Task Force. And D, that the task force be supported by 1, City of Brantford staff liaisons selected by the CAO, who will provide technical and operational advice and staff assistance. And 2, the city clerk or designate to assist with agenda preparation, minute taking, and meeting preparations. And 3, other staff is needed to support the mandate and deliverables of the task force. And E, that the Brantford Police Services Board be requested to designate staff to support the Police Station Task Force. And F, that the mandate of the Police Station Task Force is to provide advice and recommendations to council regarding the Brantford Police Services Facility Redevelopment Project. And G, that the task force report to the Committee of the Whole Operations. And H, that the term of the task force be established until such time as the task force recommends its own disbandment, having achieved the mandate. And Madam Chair, let me just indicate briefly why it's coming forward tonight, if I may. We've learned in the last little while that there is activity that needs to happen during the month of March to advance this project. And it was felt that the committee probably should be in existence before said date, tonight being a good opportunity to do so. I would appreciate folks' support of this tonight to allow us to proceed with 2/3 support of those voting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on waiving the rules? Councillor Carpenter?
Yes, I just want to remind the committee, we're not just waiving the rules on one item here. We're waiving the rules on notice of motion, which is required 24 hours notice. That was not provided tonight. And secondly, to waive the rules that even if it was given by notice of motion with 24 hours, which it wasn't, we would have to waive the rules again to hear it in the same night. So we're waiving 2 rules, one both by the mover and seconder. They're very supportive of those rules when they were enacted in the first place. Just want to remind everybody of that. That's all.
Mayor Davis, please.
Yeah, I would like the mover to, could you explain again the urgency as to why does this need to be dealt with tonight, as opposed to just seeking a waiver of the, let's say, the notice of motion requirements. Put your notice of motion out here tonight and then deal with it in the ordinary course. Just, I think normally we always ask someone who brings forward a resolution like this, you know, what is it?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm not sure I could be more clear than what I stated at the outset, that staff suggested that this probably should proceed tonight because there will be activity on this file during the month of March. And without advancing this evening to take place in the month of February, it will not come to council through the regular cycle until the last meeting in March, by which point certain activities would have to have occurred, as I understand it. And I would appreciate everybody's support tonight, but if members feel that that doesn't need to advance, then they can vote their conscience and oppose it. And, you know, we'll be playing a bit of a catch-up game when it does come before us next.
If I might, Madam Chair, I'd like to hear from staff. Is this recommended? That is there something happening in March that we're going to go with the task force to get in place sooner rather than later?
Go ahead, CAO.
Yes, Madam Chair, Brian Hutching, CEO. To this matter, right now, there has been an RFP for architects and design consultants. They've been let. They have done their initial survey of the police and various other constituents involved in this project. They come back with an original plan. We have met with them and we've asked them to do alternatives to the plan to come back, and they will be ready to bring those alternatives back, I understand, the next 2 weeks, which is now the end of February. If this committee were to not be, this resolution was not to be heard until March, we wouldn't be approving this to March 22nd. And so that would delay the architects by about a month and some stand down fees and things like that. So they are ready to go in the next 2 weeks, from my understanding from the project manager today. And it's important that we start the meetings sometime early to mid-March.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. I see no one else in the queue. We'll go to the vote, please, for waiving the rules.
Yes.
The motion to waive the rules carries unanimously on a recorded vote with the 2/3 required.
Thank you. And now we have the resolution on the floor. I see Councillor Vanderstelt first, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to volunteer my time and services for the third councillor position on this task force.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderstelt. One moment, I did make another error. We need to put this on the floor. Is it the same mover and seconder, Councillor Mccreary?
Madam Chair, yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin. Is there any portion of the resolution you'd like me to read before embarking upon my speaking opportunity?
No, I think we've heard it. You can go right ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I want to thank council members for allowing this to go forward tonight unanimously. I will say this, that we learned some significant lessons from the Gretzky Sports Center, and many of the folks here tonight were around for those days. And unfortunately, we learned that lesson extremely late in the game, and it proved to be very costly to the community and had some impacts on what our final look was within the facility. And the reason we wanted to advance this tonight is to get out of the gate early, be ahead of the game, to use all the cliches I can in one sentence, so that we are in a position to lead this project and to oversee its successful completion. So it will be a facility we can all be extremely proud of. It will suit the needs of the tenant, which is the Brantford Police, and it will be brought in at a price which is conscious of the budget that we undertake to begin with. So that's the reasoning for the committee. I would say that the lessons learned were best learned by Councillor Martin and I, who chaired that Wayne Gretzky steering committee successively. We did learn how you advance a steering committee. And there is a third seat on this committee, and I have spoken to a couple of councillors today who have served admirably on prior steering committees and who have experience in pushing projects forward. And I'm hoping that one of those councillors will agree to fill the third seat on this steering committee. It is unlike the types of committees that we ordinarily populate on council, in that this committee will be advancing the project, and it will require some careful attention and some experience in having done so. We also learned from prior experience that these types of steering committees are best populated by a limited number of municipal councillors to enable some decisions to be made in a fastidious and timely fashion. So hopefully we will see a third candidate come forward tonight, and only a third candidate, because I think it's imperative that we really do concentrate on moving forward quickly and efficiently. So I would appreciate everybody's support on this tonight. It's imperative, as I said, imperative for the corporation, imperative for the police service. They have needs that we need to satisfy. We have to consider a site for this. And we have a budget, of course, that's imperative to be held in this respect. So I can assure committee members tonight that the steering committee will do good work. We will be responsive and we will report as regularly as possible to committee of the whole through you folks to ourselves as sitting as council. And as I said, I would appreciate your support, and I do hope there will be a member that will offer to fill the third seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mccreary. Councillor Wall, please.
Thank you, Councillor Antosky. Just a couple of questions. If we did this for the Gretzky Center and we did this for the new City Hall and we're doing it for the Southwest Sports Complex, why wasn't this just the default for this project? That's the first question. Second question, if this doesn't pass, what is the default? Like, okay. And then the third was the money for this project is coming from municipal coffers, or it's coming from municipal coffers through the police services budget? And how much say do we have over? Normally, we're not involved in the police decisions outside of the police services board. So I'm just curious on how we would have a say now. So those are my three questions to whomever can answer them.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To the first question about why wasn't this thought out? It was, I think, Councillor, I think this was a little bit of a different project than the Gretzky Center and the ones you rhymed off, because it's a dual board. There's some input from the board, so I don't think that was thought through in getting into this. Some of the suggestion was made. We thought that was a good. Staff, they think it is a good idea, but that when it started out, it wasn't contemplated. We're just beginning the project. It is a good time. The architect's out there working, so it's a good time. Number two, if this is not approved, the default would be executive steering committee of staff and probably the chief of police, myself, the GM of public works, and the deputy police chief or something like that, but executive committee. I think that's strong, but having a governance structure of formal elected people is actually strong too, and accountability to the taxpayers as well, who have that strength there. And the third was question was regarding the building was the police. The building is actually our building. It's mentioned the capital project. It was a question during the capital project. It is actually a city building. That technically the police are tenants of that building. We provide all the adequate admin supports the police they need to provide policing services. They provide policing. We provide administration, as the act would say. So it really is our building. We're building it to try to provide them adequate police services. So that's the answer to your three questions.
Excellent. Okay, one more follow-up question. Thank you for that. That was excellent. If this does pass, who would make up the committee? Only in the sense that there would be members of the committee who are not staff, and then there would be staff support, or would there be members of the committee who are staff? Would it only be just who would the members of the committee be, and then who would be the support to that committee?
So through you, Madam Chair, the committee, like much of our other committees we have, you'd have senior staff reporting to the committee. And also police, as the recommendation says, police staff as well. But the committee would be made up as suggested, the two councillors suggested, and any other spots, and as well as the chair of the Brantford Police Service. That would be the governance committee, much like all the other committees we have at the city, other task forces where staff report to those task forces.
So there'd be no staff members voting on the committee, just reporting to the committee?
No, there would be no staff, through you, Madam Chair. There'd be no staff members voting on that committee. We'd be reporting to that committee.
And just final question, who's that committee reporting to? Council?
In the resolution, that committee it's very clear that this committee then reports to council, reports up to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter, please.
Yes, you took the floor away from Councillor Jen Vanderstelt, who was first on the speaking list to give it to the mover, and I think he was left off.
My apologies.
The Councillor Vanderstelt who first had his hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that, Councillor Vanderstelt. Go ahead.
No, not at all. I'm just volunteering my time and services. That was the sole reason for me making a comment, Chair Toski. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. I don't see any, oh, sorry, Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, I did want to speak. I just didn't want to jump in at Councillor Vanderstelt, make sure that was clearly put in place. Council will recall a similar resolution that came forward from Councillor Toski with an appointment, with the names of the individuals appointed to a committee. That individual was myself. And there was a great debate about how this shouldn't happen, that we should be going to the appointments process. And that motion was referred to the appointments committee, which I don't know when that's going to meet or if it's going to meet, to deal with the appointment process of somebody to deal with the medical marijuana, you recall. So I'm just interested to see the standard of council on one issue as opposed to another. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. I see no further hands. We do have Councillor Vanderstelt, who has, oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there's no other councillors that want to volunteer for the third position, I'll be happy to step in.
All right, so that then that does leave us with two. We did have Councillor Vanderstelt.
Oh, okay.
So,
I withdraw.
okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
All right. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm with the clerk that Mayor's de facto sitting on this task force.
Through the chair, pardon me, excuse me, through the chair, any by way of our procedural bylaw as well as by way of our resolutions, you would in fact be an ex officio. So you would count for quorum if you attend, but not affect quorum if you do not.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that wouldn't affect quorum. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So with just having the one name forward, I'm hoping we can make that friendly without, okay, we've got nods from both. Great, thank you. And then that takes us to the vote. Oh, Councillor Carpenter, thank you.
Just one minor thing. The resolution says they report back to council. I'd like to have an amendment that they report back to committee of the whole so that we have our proper speaking opportunities on the issues. Thank you.
I've got friendlies from both. Thank you.
That's great.
It does, okay, it says G, Committee of the Whole Operations. So
yes, but I heard council, that's why.
Okay, I think we're good there. All right, let's have the vote on this.
I don't know who I'm talking. Yes.
Thank you. Item 7.3, Police Station Task Force is approved on a unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Vanderstelt, Utley, Sless, Mccreary, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
All right, thank you. We have no notices of motion. Thank you for your patience, committee, and the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening.